Tommy.
That clock must be. That clock is wrong.
Joe. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting of December 11th, 2019. Will everyone please rise for a salute to the flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice of the meeting has been satisfied in accordance with Chapter 231 PL 1975 by advertising in the Home News Tribune, notifying the Sentinel Publishing Company and the Star Ledger, also posting on the bulletin board and filing with the Borough Clerk. Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Here.
Mr. Corrigan?
Here.
Mr. Emma?
Here.
Mr. Savilli?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Mr. Foley?
Here.
Mr. Kemp?
Here.
Mr. Barry?
Here.
Mr. Cornell?
Here.
First case is 19-12 Mary Aline LLC, Journey Mill Road.
Go ahead, Ms. Chiara.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Chiara Mancini, and I represent Mary Eileen LLC, and I'm from the firm of Heilbrunn Tate. We respectfully request a continuance of this hearing. I know that there's a substantial application scheduled before us, and we would respectfully request that this application is carried until February without further need of notice.
Mr. Chairman, board members, the applicant has provided notice for this evening in accordance with the municipal land use law and the ordinance, so the board can take jurisdiction and then adjourn the case to the February 26th meeting without need for further notice. The board routinely will grant adjournments such as this request since it's the first listing. So if there's any questions for the board or for the applicant, Chairman will have a vote on or an approval.
We have an approval from the board to carry this to the 26th of February, 2020.
So moved. Seconded.
Anyone against? Not hearing any nays, it carries. Ms. Mancini, I'm not sure, I forgot to bring my file, I apologize. I don't know if we're out of time, but the applicant would grant extension of time if the board needs additional time to act.
Yes, I'm not sure either, but
You would?
yeah.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So anybody who's here on this application, the Mary Eileen application, that will not be heard tonight, it will be heard February 26th here at 7 o'clock, and there'll be no further notice being provided. I'm sorry, 7:30 on February 26th, and no further notice will be provided.
And Mr. Kemp, to add in, our engineer is here tonight, and if anybody who's here for Mary Eileen would like to discuss the plans or has any questions, I'll be in the room next door for the next 15 minutes, able to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, we appreciate that. If not, we'll see you on February 26th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next case on the agenda is 19-03, CVS Kaplan, 267 Washington Road. I just want to note before we start that this application is a continuance of our last meeting with CVS, which was on July the 24th, 2019, and it had been adjourned until today's meeting. Mr. Sachs,
Thank you.
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Lawrence Sachs, on behalf of the applicant, K-Land 59. And, Mr. Chairman, you are correct. We were last here July 24th, 2019. It was probably 50 degrees warmer than it was this evening. The property is located at 267 Washington Road, Block 136, lots 2804, 38, 39, 40, 58, and 59. As the board may recall, at the last hearing, we presented two witnesses. One of our witnesses was Doug Grisco, who's an engineer with Dynamic Engineering, and we also had the testimony of Craig Paragoy, who is a traffic engineer with Dynamic Traffic. What I just want to do is spend a minute or so just refreshing the recollection of the board and the public as well as to the plan that was for your consideration that evening and what was testified to by both of our witnesses. This property, as you are aware, located at the intersection of Sayreville Boulevard South and Washington Road. We have up there Exhibit A2, which is actually the colorized rendering of the site. And again, as the board will recall, there was testimony as to, is this amplifying, by the way, Joan? Or should I talk into this? All right, so let me talk into this then. Okay. Now it is, okay, I'll still talk into this. All right. Anyway, the testimony which was elicited at the last hearing back on July 24th was what's being proposed was a freestanding CVS store with 50 parking spaces, drive-through, a bypass lane, specific loading area. There were some comments made by Mr. Cornell as to a reconfiguration of some of the parking spaces, which we had agreed to do at the last hearing on the Sayreville Boulevard South side of the site. If the board will recall, there was a lot of testimony by Mr. Grisco as to describing the site conditions, what was being proposed specifically. There was some concern about the view of this property from Downs Drive. We presented an exhibit which showed what the view shed was from Downs Drive and also from other points of angle as well. Mr. Paragoy testified as to his traffic study, which I know is part of the record. He testified as to the points of access here, one point of access being on Washington, which would be a full movement driveway, and the other point of access being on Downs Drive as well, which would also be a full movement driveway. We provided testimony as to the types of deliveries that occur on site, and as the board may recall, the testimony was that we have one tractor trailer that comes here once a week, scheduled during off hours, and other deliveries occur by box trucks and even some smaller trucks for some of the other vendors that service this site. There was testimony provided as to the hours of operation. This is not a 24/7 operation. It was 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and shorter hours on Sunday. Actually, shorter hours, I believe, on Saturday as well. The drive-through lane, there was testimony that closes 1 hour before store closing. But the gist of that is that we were not dealing with a 24/7 operation, and that's certainly not changing. And we do have also a representative from CVS tonight who will provide some testimony as to how their standard operations are. We never got to the public. There were a lot of questions from the board members, and I think one of the primary concerns that I believe the board had was the impact on Downs Drive. And we tried to answer as many questions as we could. It really is the model of CVS to have multiple points of access, and this did have multiple points of access to the site. And as well, even from a fire safety standpoint and even from a public safety standpoint, you certainly want to have as much access to a site as you can. I believe we also provided testimony that we could not have 2 points of access on Washington just because of the orientation and the location of the site and its proximity to Sayreville Boulevard. But anyway, notwithstanding, and the fact that CVS really wanted to have multiple points of access and wanted to have that point of access on Downs Drive, that was the plan that was submitted for your consideration at the last hearing. That was 5 months ago. The applicant heard your concerns, heard your comments, and what we are prepared to provide for you this evening, and we'll provide testimony as to it, is a revised plan. And we have actually eliminated the Downs Drive access point entirely. So there will be no access from Downs Drive to this location. There will be a new access on Sayreville Boulevard. Our engineer will describe that, but that's going to be a right in and right out only. So to obviously take into consideration the comments of this board, and I'm sure the comments of the public, because we've heard some of those comments on social media about the impact on Downs Drive, we have entirely eliminated that aspect of the plan, and we'll briefly, I'll provide a copy of that revised plan to you. So, Mr. Chairman, I have several witnesses tonight. I'm going to call back Mr. Grisco, who testified at the last hearing, and I'm only going to have him testify as to what the proposed revisions are and how they impact the site from an engineering standpoint. I'm going to call Mr. Paragoy as well again, just for some brief testimony as to how the revisions affect traffic and circulation on site. And then I have 3 new witnesses. I have a representative from CVS who will testify. He will testify as to the CVS need for this site in this location. We also have a witness from the Brick House who will testify as to the operations that occur on the Brick House today and really the reasons why they're looking to sell this property. And then finally, I have a professional planner, Christine Cafone, who will testify as to the use and bulk variance relief that we're seeking. So that's basically where we're going to go tonight. Certainly, I expect that, and I know, Mr. Chairman, I know you want to hear from the public. I'll try to be as brief as possible with my witnesses and certainly let the public make whatever comments they want to make. So,
Okay, proceed, Mr. Sachs.
thank you. I'd like to call back Mr. Doug Grisco. And Doug, let me give you this microphone.
And Mr. Grisco, you're still under oath, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Grisco, and let me, actually, maybe let's just spend a minute, let's spend a minute just summarizing what you presented last time, very briefly. And I think I did some of it already, but I'll let you do it.
And you did. Exhibit A2 was the color rendered site plan that we presented at the last hearing. We have the CVS building in the center of the site. We have the full movement access driveway fronting on Washington Road. And we had the other full movement driveway at the northwest quadrant of the site on Downs Drive. We had a total of 50 parking spaces with circulation all around the building because we have the drive-through window component. Perimeter landscaping and parking directly around the building. It's pretty much the site as it was presented, and Mr. Sachs explained that as well. So to focus in on the change that we touched on, and I'll just bring up our new exhibit. What's being passed out are copies of 3 exhibits that have either been or new or updated, and I'll touch on them each briefly.
And Mr. Grisco, if you wouldn't mind, since it's a new night, why don't we just start with B1 with tonight's exhibits?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Kim, I think I marked the one for your secretary as A7. but
Okay,
we-
then we can pick up and go A7 and
That's
A8.
fine.
That's, if they've ever been pre-marked, just make it easier.
Okay,
All right, so.
A7, yeah.
This is A7, just give us an idea of what it is before you get into details.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm going to hold it up so we could kind of compare, and then I'll put it over the top. This is the new site plan exhibit. It is actually has a revision date, revision number 1, and it's revised December 11th for tonight's presentation. Again, I'm going to focus everyone in on the northwest quadrant. towards Downs Drive. Above Exhibit A2, you will see the full movement driveway that we had on the previous exhibit. Now I will put the new exhibit, which is A7, in its place. You can see that we've removed that second driveway that we had on Downs Drive in its entirety. We've landscaped, we've extended the 6-foot-high white vinyl fence further towards the intersection and extended the plantings that would be along that fence as well. We've added, if you will, we've swung that driveway over to Sayreville Boulevard, and as indicated, that would be a right-in, right-out driveway only. With the addition, or the relocation of that driveway to Sayreville Boulevard, the few parking spaces that were on that corner swung over, so we have 4 spaces up in that same northwest quadrant. So again, if you were to look at these side by side, you will see the majority of the site remains exactly the same. We're really focused in on that northwest corner where we've eliminated the Downs Drive driveway, moved it to Sayreville Boulevard for a right-in, right-out, and then reconfigured the parking. We did have 50 parking spaces under the original exhibit. With the relocation and some other adjustments, we're down to 48 parking spaces. Again, more than ample for CVS's operations. At the last hearing as well, we had presented, originally we had presented more modern architectural elevations, and then Exhibit A6 was a revised elevations for the building, what we call the colonial. I had given testimony as to some of the features of that. One of the board members pointed out that there were some discrepancies with how the roadway names were shown and not corresponding. We did revise that, so if you will, I can make this Exhibit A8.
Well, actually, was this the second page of
I
A7?
think I have it first, so I
Okay.
can, let me bring that out to stay in tune. Switching gears, sorry.
Well, actually,
But still-
it was page 3 of A7, so,
Okay,
all right, so let's,
so are they all going to be A7 then?
is that all right, Mr. Kemp? Should we,
Sure, all right, so
Yeah.
we can do this as A7, page 1, and
Right.
then,
Okay.
page 2 and then
If we
page
could
3?
do it that way, then
That's
that's
fine.
great.
Yep.
So A7, we simply revised the architectural elevations for
so
the
wait,
colonial.
before we go further, that's going to be A7, page 3 that you're presenting right now?
A7, page 3. correct.
Okay, thank you.
We revised the names on the roadways to reflect Sayreville Boulevard, Washington Road. The rear elevation, that is where that faces, would be the gas station, and then the bottom elevation, which faces Downs Drive. That's the only thing that has changed, just to clarify going forward. In addition, Exhibit A7, page 2. At our last hearing, we had brought the original cross-section exhibit that showed what the illustrated what the view would be from Downs Drive. This had the previous architecture on it, so I did not have an exhibit to show what that view would look like with the colonial architecture. We've updated it. Again, Exhibit A7, page 2. We have the new colonial style building, again, illustrating what would be the general view from Downs Drive. The driveway is no longer there. We've extended the white vinyl fence all the way towards the Sayreville Boulevard intersection, and it also extended the plantings along that fence line. So we no longer have that driveway, and this is your viewpoint of the rear of the building with the colonial look.
All right, so, Mr. Grisco, then, just to summarize the few revisions to this plan. We've eliminated entirely the Downs Drive entrance and exit.
Correct.
We've added a new entrance and exit point on Sayreville Boulevard, which will be a right-in and right-out only.
Correct.
You've extended the fence all the way down now to the intersection of Downs Drive and Sayreville Boulevard,
Correct.
and you've provided some, obviously, additional landscaping in the area, in that area, which obviously replaces the area where the exit was.
Correct.
Right. There's no other changes that are proposed to this compared to A2 that you testified to at the last hearing?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions of Mr. Grisco. He's certainly available for any board questioning.
One question that I have, when we were talking last time back in July, it was brought up by the board about the air conditioners on the roof. Now, with this new colonial building, are the air conditioners going to be on the roof as the previous testimony, or is that going to be changed?
The HVAC units still remain on the roof. They're basically in the center of the roof. And if I go back to Exhibit A7, page 2, with that new style architecture, we have that mansard roof that goes around the building. So that provides that screening of those units that was not on the previous. So they're still on the roof, but they're not going to be visible because that mansard roof is actually providing that screening. The roof itself, the flat roof, is lower, so that mansard roof provides almost a parapet wall screening those units.
Is there going to be anything other than the air conditioning units on that roof?
Any of the mechanical items, HVAC, to use that, they don't have any other type of, generators or anything like that. So it's really just the HVAC equipment that they have.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Cornell, this was probably to Jay. Site triangle on the exit onto Downs Drive because of the wall, is that an issue?
We raised that question, I think at the prior hearing, and I think it was indicated that that's something that they were going to review as part of the site plan. They didn't feel it was an issue, but it's something that'll have to definitely be addressed as part of the site plan application.
Correct.
Chairman? Yes. This new exit you proposed, the entrance, isn't that gonna force everybody coming out, they would have to go through that neighborhood now? When they come out, they're gonna, because this is one way here. You're saying right in, right out, there's no other choice because it's one way. But when they come out, they're gonna have to make the right and go through that neighborhood to get out, right? Because I don't think you can make this U-turn here.
You know what, I have my traffic engineer who can answer that question for you. Yep.
Another question. Are you going to have any generators?
No generators.
Nowhere.
Nowhere on site.
Any other questions of the board? No other questions? Mr. Sachs, you can call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call Craig Paragoy.
Evening, Mr. Paraguay, you're still under oath, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. Please continue.
All right, Craig, if you can, from a traffic standpoint, if you can describe what turning movements will now occur with this new configuration and whether or not it affects circulation or anything.
Yeah, and to get right to the point, as we mentioned before, one of the reasons we wanted that secondary access was so some traffic that wanted to make a left onto Washington Road rather than concentrating along one point could make that at the traffic signal. So now the only difference, instead of doing that, previously they would make the left out on Downs Drive, come across the opening, and then make the left on Sayreville Boulevard. Now they would be able to make that U-turn movement to get back to the traffic signal to make a left. Small amount of traffic doing that, but it still does provide that ability to get to the traffic signal, which I think was the key really for that secondary access point. I did modify my traffic numbers just to make sure that that would work, that would function acceptably. It certainly does, no issues whatsoever, and the entire the remaining driveways and access points all operate similarly as I testified to at the last meeting.
All right, so Craig, anyone who wants to access this site from the residential development behind the site in the town lake would have to now come up Sayreville Boulevard, make a left at the traffic light.
Correct, and then make a left.
And then make a left into the site. And then if they wanted to go back to the Town Lake development, they could certainly go out Washington, but they would probably just go out Sayreville Boulevard and go that direction.
And make the right, yes.
Okay.
And we talked about the last time, could we physically restrict the right turns out on the Downs Drive, which then I think would have been an issue for the people who live back there. Now, that all goes away. I think this is a much better situation, given the comments of the board at the last meeting.
Okay. And in terms of traffic that now comes down Downs Drive, without this site being here, if they want to go to Sayreville Boulevard in a southerly direction, they come to a stop sign at the intersection of Downs Drive and Sayreville. They look to see if any traffic's coming. Then, hopefully. And then they would go to the area that's the median area and observing traffic to see if anything's coming from the other direction before making a left on Sayreville Boulevard.
Yes.
Okay. And that's the same turning movement that's going to occur with anyone exiting this site from Sayreville Boulevard who wants to get to the traffic signal.
Yes, they'll make the right on the Sayreville Boulevard, essentially make the left into the wide median opening, and then the left on the Sayreville Boulevard to
All
go
right.
back to the traffic signal.
And that's not an illegal turn, that's not a prohibited turn at all?
No, not at all.
Okay.
There's plenty of room to make it. It's a
Okay.
nice, generous opening.
Okay. And in terms of this new plan, I know we're going from 50 spaces to 48 parking spaces. I think you testified last time that the parking that's provided on site is more than adequate based upon your prior observations of CVS, and you gave some of that data. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. And the loss of 2 spaces, is that going to impact anything?
No, we were well below, based on our research, based on ITE's research, those numbers were well below what the number of spaces proposed are.
All right. And in terms of truck circulation and fire and emergency vehicle circulation, does this revised configuration have any impact on that?
No, I testified the last time the truck circulation, that all remains the same. No trucks were ever going on Downs, and then no trucks will go on Sayreville Boulevard.
Okay. And in terms of the interior circulation on site, does this revision to the plan impact that at all?
No.
None whatsoever? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything further of Mr. Paraguay.
Mr. Sachs, I don't know if I'm bringing this up at the present time or whether you want to bring it up later, but I have in my hand here a report from CME from Jay Cornell dated on July 24, 2019, where we're discussing the waivers. I would like to get into these waivers again and refresh the board as to how many waivers we have in total.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not sure, well, actually, I'll have Mr. Grisco testify to that item. I'm not sure any of them have changed with the result of this revision, but that's fine, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if there's any questions for Mr. Paraguay. If not, I'll have him seated.
Board have any other questions?
Just one. The last time we had, we talked, this, where the new exit and entrance is, that was where the school bus stop was. Has that been,
Where, at Downs Drive?
it's where the new opening is. It's right in that area there.
Yeah, and nothing, we're still maintaining a pretty significant green area there, so the bus stop can remain. We also talked about the bus stop,
That's
the transit bus stop,
transit
that's
bus
been
stop. On the
relocated
side
back to the
street
one.
is the school bus stop.
Right, and we still have a large lawn area there for that to operate.
Okay. Thanks, Craig. Doug, if you want to just briefly go over the waivers. I don't think they've changed, but you could just indicate them for the record, that's fine.
Will do, and if Mr. Cornell can, if I miss any, please correct me, but I'm going to start, I believe, number 8 in your letter is the first item. That is the 50-foot landscape buffer area. It's a non-residential, from a non-residential use to a residential use or a residentially zoned lot. That remains the same. We are requesting that waiver because we do not have the 50-foot buffer. Number 9, parking within a front yard setback or within 5 feet of the property line. We do have the parking along Sayreville Boulevard, which is in close proximity to that 5 feet, so that's requesting a waiver.
And actually, Mr. Grisco, we have 2 front yards here, do we not?
We have 3 front.
3 front yards, actually, right, okay.
But in this case, yes, your main 2 front yards are Saraville Boulevard and Washington Ave. Number 10, we've touched on this. It's the parking spaces, 75 required. Original plan presented 50 with the revised driveway configuration. We're down to 48.
And that's a variance.
Sorry, correct, variance. The 20% of the site consisting of landscaping and at least 5% along the public right-of-ways, requesting a waiver. I mean, we are closer to this with some of the changes, but we'll still seek that waiver with the closure of the driveway and some additional green space, but I still think we fall short there. 10%, no, this is number 12. 10% of all parking areas shall be landscaped about the interior. That is a waiver for that.
And actually, getting back to that one, I think we had some discussion with Mr. Cornell last time about this, that you basically reconfigured some of the parking on the side based on his recommendation.
Yeah, we have heard, you know, one of the comments was, and this was presented at the last hearing, but is reflected on the new exhibit A7, page 1, is that we added that landscape island in front of those center parking spaces to have that division so it's not a pull-through situation. So we did add some landscape areas, but still falling slightly short.
All right, I think the next waiver is 14, if I'm not mistaken.
All loading areas abutting the building, whereas we had testified that in this case, the loading zone is on the eastern side of the site. The truck will stage there and they will push the deliveries and items for the store across to the back of the building.
And that would be primarily for tractor trailers, which is 1 day a week
Correct.
during off hours.
Correct.
The next waiver, I'm just kind of looking at my notes here, would be,
Yep. The fences or walls up to a maximum of 6 feet height, permitted in the rear or side yards, where the retaining walls with the 6-foot-high vinyl fencing do not meet that. Again, that's along Downs Drive. We're maintaining that existing retaining wall that is there and adding the fence, so that's that existing condition that we have along Downs Drive. No change. No change from the plan that we presented to the plan presented tonight.
I think number 16 we said we'll comply with,
that's
which
a
is...
caliper
right.
size on trees.
Right.
We'll address that at site plan.
Number 17 deals with site triangles, which I guess we'll deal with at site plan level.
Yeah,
If,
if there's any, all site triangles will have no obstructions within them. We'll revisit that.
And I think 18, we said we would comply as well with the spacing of the trees.
Spacing of the trees, yes, we
Okay.
said we could do that.
I think 19 was Mr. Cornell's recommendation.
Correct,
about-
that was the island that we added on those center parking spaces.
Okay. Well, number 20, I think, is really what we've dealt with now, which is, the comment was the feasibility of removing the proposed access driveway along Downs Drive should be further reviewed due to negative impact to the residential community in that area. So
We have fully removed that access.
we
point.
have fully removed that access now.
Yeah, that's,
I mean, some of these are just engineering comments. I'm just looking for waivers.
Chairman, if number 13, Mr. Sachs, if you just go back, I think you skipped over that one.
I'm sorry.
Rear sidewalk.
Yep. Yeah, number 13, if you can, Mr. Grisco. Oh, okay, was sidewalks in the parking areas.
we did address that as far as, not necessarily sidewalk, but with that
Right.
landscape island in the front, we provided a crosswalk at the center of from the main entrance out to the parking, towards Saraville Boulevard. So we have that, crosswalk hatching.
You still need waivers for not providing sidewalk around the entire parking lot, but you did provide that access.
Yeah, so it's more of a
Correct.
partial waiver, but yes, it's
Correct, yes.
still a waiver.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I think we've addressed, the several waivers that we need. And I do think, certainly, I know Mr. Cornell's comment about Downs Drive is addressed with the submission of A7 as the revised plan.
So my calculations on waivers come to 7, am I correct? Or is yours come to 7 also?
I think I said last time, Mr. Chairman, I'll never disagree with your math. So if it's 7, it's 7.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Doc. All right, Mr. Chairman, I have 3 other new witnesses now, and I appreciate the board in indulging in us at least coming up and letting us have our old witnesses come up. But I do have 3 additional witnesses. The first witness I'd like to call up is Mr. Joe Skirpy from CVS. I'll give you this.
Good evening, sir. Need to swear you in?
Excuse me?
Swear you in?
Yeah, I need to be sworn in, yeah?
Yep. Swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And give us your name, spell your last name for the record.
Yeah, it's Joseph, last name Serpy, S-E-R-P as in Peter, I.
Thank you. Please continue.
Mr. Serpy, if you can give the board the benefit of your current position and experience with CVS.
Sure, I currently work for CVS as a district leader. I've been with the company for a little bit over 27 years.
Okay, and in your capacity, what does that entail?
I oversee the operations of 13 different stores, which are pretty much in this particular area.
Okay. Now, as part of your duties with CVS, I'm sure CVS did some type of study as to determine whether or not to try to locate a CVS at this site. Can you give the board the benefit of
Oh, sure.
what that entailed?
What we did as a company, we took a look at the area, and we definitely feel it's underserved, because we have, I guess you'll hand out that out. Within a 2-mile radius, there's 29,000 people. There are only 3 independents, which all close at 6 o'clock. So taking a look at our suite of services, we have better hours of operation, parking lot, drive-through convenience, so that would help us better service the community. Go over our standard operating hours. Front was 8 to 10. We're not doing 24. Pharmacy is 9 to 9, which exceeds the hours of the independents, so the people who are working kind of later can still stop by and pick up their prescriptions. Pharmacy is open on the weekends, 9 to 6, 9 to 5, and it's really all for medical needs at this point.
All right, so you said that you did an analysis of the area, and I've handed out an exhibit that's been marked as A8, which is basically a radius map, correct?
Yes, it's a radius map.
All right.
It shows where we are in the middle of that, and then going out in a 2-mile stretch of what is actually out there, when we just have the 3 independents.
All right, and this was prepared by CVS, so.
Correct.
Just to go over what A8 depicts, it shows a 2-mile radius from this particular site. That site being marked as I guess as a red X.
Yes.
All right. It also indicates that the population within that 2-mile radius is 29,292 individuals.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that was from the last census?
Yes.
Okay. And it also shows on here 3 pharmacies. One of them, I guess, is just outside of the 2-mile radius. That would be Dushak's South River Pharmacy on Main Street,
Which is about 2.1 miles.
right, which I'm familiar with. Then there's the Sayreville Pharmacy,
Yes,
and then there's the Quick Mart Pharmacy.
correct.
Sayreville Pharmacy being located off of Washington, and Quick Mart being located on Washington. Now, are those? Tell me about those pharmacies. Do they sell the same items that CVS sells?
For the most part, just from a prescription standpoint, they have a limited supply of stuff at that particular point. We have a lot better selection from an HBA standpoint, which is health and beauty aids, talking about the multiple aspirin and everything else somebody would need if they're sick, in addition to their
Sorry.
Closer to the microphone.
Oops, sorry.
Use your microphone.
You know what? I'll give him this one.
Thank you. Yeah, so from a standpoint of, prescription drugs, we do have the full array of everything somebody would particularly need on that type of thing. From an HBA, which is all our health and beauty aids, which go in conjunction with the OTC items, Advil, NyQuil, and all that type of stuff. We'll have that full offering in this particular store also.
All right, so in terms of, I guess, selecting this particular site, obviously the proximity to 29,000 residents within a 2-mile radius was an important consideration.
Yes,
All right, the fact that it's close to a residential area in Town Lake, which hopefully you would be able to serve.
yes.
Certainly serving medical and pharmaceutical needs. What about pedestrian traffic? Would you, because of the location, would you obviously?
We also do ped counts, which would include how many people walk by a particular location, so that's taken into consideration when we decide to put CVS in a location.
Okay. And the hours of operation, I know Mr. Grisco testified, but I think you confirmed as well, would be 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
That's 7 days a week.
I'm sorry, Monday through 7 days a week, I'm sorry. The pharmacy, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday.
Correct.
And does the drive-through close 1 hour earlier than the pharmacy?
Yes.
All right, and in terms of the parking lot that's proposed here, as you know, there's 48 parking spaces. I believe both Mr. Grisco and Mr. Paragoy testified anecdotally as to capacity at these parking lots, but is it generally capacity of around 30 to 40% of your parking area?
Typically, that's what we see in most of our locations, so only about 30 to 40 tops, especially even at Christmas time.
All right, so if we have my math's not so great, it's probably easier using 50%, but 40% of 50 parking spaces would be roughly 20.
Correct.
All right, and obviously a little less if it was 30. So are you comfortable with the amount of parking that's being provided on this site?
Yes, we definitely chose the site because of that, too.
Okay. And is there a backup generator that would be proposed at this site?
No, we use no generators.
Okay. And in terms of cameras, can you describe to the board what type of camera operation is in any CVS store, and particularly with this CVS store?
Yeah, we use like a standard setup where we have, I'm going to say about 8 to 10 inside, and we also have cameras outside to take a look at what's going on outside the building.
Okay. Is there a manager on site all the time?
There'll be a manager and at least one key holder on site.
All right. And what's the CVS policy pertaining to loitering that might occur on any site? What's the tolerance for that at CVS?
Right, we do post a no solicitation right on the door, and we don't put up with any of that stuff.
All right. So if there was loitering going on, you'd address it right away?
We would address it, yes.
Okay.
It's typically not an issue in the stores.
All right. And you do have cameras in the parking lot?
Correct.
You have multiple cameras in the parking lot?
Yes.
So if, God forbid, something occurred in the parking area, there'd be a videotape of that could be provided to
Yes, there
the
is.
police?
Yes.
Okay. And in general, and I know CVS is obviously prominent throughout New Jersey, is there generally a lot of police activity that occurs at a CVS, if at all?
Well, typically in the stores I have now, at most, I would say we'd have the police go to a store twice a year.
Okay. All right. And would that be maybe for traffic incidents for the most part?
Yeah, either traffic, we do have, once in a while, people back up into one another in the parking lot, so we do have the police do that, and that's where the outside cameras come in handy.
All right, but I guess it would be the CVS model that you're really not an attractive nuisance to the community or for crime, for that matter.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. All right. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions of Mr. Skirpy. Certainly, if the board has any questions, they can inquire.
I have a question. You handed out a paper here with a 2-mile radius with a population of 29,000.
Yes.
Why did you use 2-mile radius? Why didn't we expand that to 4 miles or 3 miles?
Well, typically, most of our shoppers shop that close to the store. They don't typically drive more than that look to get to the store.
Are you aware that there are 11 pharmacies within 4 miles?
Are they supposed to? Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can't be speaking out, clapping, or cheering. At the end of the hearing, there will be time for everybody who wants to get up and speak. And we would ask the same of everyone else to not clap or interrupt you when you're speaking, okay? So, thank you. Sorry, please continue.
No problem.
I just wanted to know why we use 2 miles as your basis here when there are 4 pharmacies within 11.
We typically take a look at the customer who shops to do a PIN study, and basically most of the customers are within that radius to come to the store.
Another question I have, on Mr. Cornell's report, we're talking about landscaping. Does CVS take care of the landscaping on the property, or does the owner of the building take care of that?
Well, how it works, it depends on what's written into the lease. I don't have that information right now, but I would answer it that I would be on the property at least once a month, making sure everything's looking good.
Are you responsible for the CVS, which is located on Ferris Street in East Brunswick?
Yes.
You are?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to get back to your analysis of the 2-mile radius. It seems as if, as you probably know, we have a Rite Aid and a Walgreens right outside of this 2-mile radius. They probably do the same thing when they do their analysis of their 2-mile radius. So, you know, they're overlapping considerably with your folks that you're looking to, you know, service, I guess. How did you analyze having those 2 large pharmacies just outside that 2-mile radius?
I don't have the answer for that one.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You have 3 pharmacies within a 2-mile radius, but I did a quick lookup, and it's actually 4 pharmacies, not to be a stickler. I don't think it's Dushak's Pharmacy anymore, it's called something else. The other issue I have with this is that I think we have something like 42,000 population in Saraville, and so you're saying this is like 29,000 in a 2-mile radius. It seems far. So you're saying that we've got 69% of our population within this side of Saraville?
I think part of this is going into South, going into.
Yeah, some of it goes into South River as well. I agree, yeah. It's just not Sayreville.
Seeing that.
So it's 4 pharmacies within this 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I think A8 does obviously encompass part of South River because that's where Dushak's is on Main Street or whatever it's called at this particular point. Yeah, yeah,
Boundaries.
right, right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions. Can you tell everyone where the nearest CVS is to this one?
The nearest one, I believe, would be on Route 18 in East Brunswick.
Okay. And what about towards the east or west?
Well, CVS going towards the Driscoll Bridge, we have nothing in, like, South Amboy, Perth Amboy, we have nothing in that area at all.
Okay, thanks. I have a few questions just so we get them on the record. Are you going to be selling any food in the CVS?
Any,
Food?
just your general grocery, that's it.
Okay.
Like, nothing prepared, no prepared food.
No prepared food, so
Right.
snacks, candies, drinks,
Yes,
vending machines?
no vending machines.
Okay. Is there any seating? Any seating? Sitting, like
Yeah,
tables?
we do have a waiting area in the pharmacy for
Okay.
people to wait for their prescriptions.
I was more interested in like a table, chairs where people would sit
No.
down and, no, so none of that.
None of that.
Do you sell lottery tickets?
No,
Okay. Any sales outside the building, like special events, Easter, Christmas, 4th of July, fireworks, anything like that?
nothing like that, no.
Okay. And do you advertise, you send out flyers or advertise in?
Yeah, there's advertising in usually the local newspaper.
Okay. And that probably extends outside the 2-mile radius?
Well, I mean, we do in all of New Jersey, same,
Okay.
it's all
All
the
right.
different papers.
Okay, so you're actually advertising to people outside the 2-mile radius?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? A couple more questions. In regards to the food product that you sell things like bread, milk, I mean, not prepared things, but like a grocery store in a
Gallons
way.
of milk we will sell, and, yeah, we will sell loaves of bread, yes.
Right, and like canned foods, things like, to what extent will you be selling groceries?
I mean, if you go, it's gonna be your convenience stuff where it's like cereal, some cans of soup, that type of stuff.
I'm just kind of, because this is more like a convenience store more so than a pharmacy. You
Well, if
basically look
if
at
you're
it.
thinking that 85% of our sales is pharmaceuticals, right? A small portion, I'm gonna say about 3% of total sales will be something from the grocery aisle.
That's revenue-wise though, right?
Correct.
What about transaction-wise?
Transaction-wise, it's still 85% pharmacy, 25% front store, 15% front store, which would include all the HBA product and everything else that gets into that 15%.
So 85% of the store's transactions are gonna be all pharmaceutical
Yes,
prescriptions.
yes.
Aren't your scores?
We have something that substantiates that somewhere?
I don't have.
Because that
anything within-
seems, then why sell all the other stuff? Why carry it? Why have the
I
overhead?
was getting to that, because I think
ahead.
your stores are set up, most pharmacies are set up with the pharmacies in the back, so people walking through pick up items. I mean, it's set up that way so you can sell stuff,
Correct,
right? It's not mainly for food. It's
Right.
pharmaceuticals, and you're telling people, as they buy, as they pass by, they want this, they need this, they need this. That's what it's set up for.
yes.
Right. That's why they do it.
He's only
It's not a-
getting, he's only getting 15% transactions out of
Yeah, I
it.
don't know.
It's not even
That's-
worth the
that's-
time if he's selling them.
His price is much higher than ShopRite.
Right.
It might be worth the time, but I don't know.
We sell
But
frozen
it's-
foods?
Yes.
One last question for myself. Do you have any idea the amount of traffic you get a day in a store?
You mean customer count?
Yes, individuals coming.
It depends on the store, the location. When we first open up, I'm sure the customer count's not gonna be through the roof. It'll just take some time for it to pick up.
You ever feel what you do at the other stores, or?
Depending on a pharmacy in a front store, we're talking about maybe 2,000-3,000 transactions a day.
Thank you.
What types of frozen foods do you sell?
Frozen foods, he asked. What kind of frozen foods?
Frozen food, just quick microwavable dinners.
Dog foods, pet foods? Do you
We
sell?
sell that, yes.
You say you're responsible for the CVS in East Brunswick. You know the square footage of the East Brunswick store as compared to the one that you want here in Serval? The one here in Serval is 14,800. What's that square footage in the one in East Brunswick on Ferris?
It's gonna be pretty similar to that.
Very similar?
Yes.
And what about the other one? Are you responsible for the other one in East Brunswick also?
The one right on Route 18, yes.
Talking
that
about the one, Mr. Green, in Civic Center?
Yes.
Okay. On Rouge Lane?
Rouge Lane, yes.
You're responsible for that one
Yes.
also?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we covered it, but can you tell us about the number of employees and like different shifts or how it kind of works?
Typically, when we first open the store, it's gonna be run basically with one pharmacist and probably one technician. And then in the front part of the store, it'll be one person, management-wise, and one cashier from opening to closing of the building.
Sounds like 4, right?
Correct.
And then, so people come and go, but usually there's 4. Is there ever more than 4?
During some peak times, I'm gonna say at the holidays, it might go up 1 or 2 people.
Is this store also going to have a mini clinic, flu shots, et cetera?
No mini clinic, but all pharmacies do flu shots.
Any other shots?
We do expanded stuff, Shingrix, anything that is protocol in the state of New Jersey.
Any other questions of this witness? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Green, before we dismiss him, I just had a couple of questions for him, if you don't mind. All right, so if I understand your testimony, is it standard protocol to use that 2-mile radius to determine from a demographic standpoint?
Yes.
Okay. And I know Mr. Emmett thinks maybe there's 4. I don't know, maybe we missed one, but all right. But there's, all right, so there's 4 within that area. The 29,000 count that you put onto this exhibit does include some of the population in South River.
Right.
I don't know if it includes anything in South Amboy. I don't know if it went that far. But that's the area,
Right.
the study area that you analyzed.
Correct.
All right. And in terms of East Brunswick, and by the way, is there a CVS store presently in Sayreville?
No.
There is none. How many stores are there presently in East Brunswick?
2.
And isn't there one that's been approved, an additional one on the corner of Summerhill Road and Old Stage Road?
Correct.
All right, so there's going to be 3, and I would imagine those 3 are probably, well, I know for a fact, because maybe I have some intimate knowledge about East Brunswick and those locations, that they're probably all within at least a 3-mile radius of each other? Okay. Okay, I have no further questions, Mr. Skirby. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sachs, call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call Donna Amato.
Good evening, Mr. Amato. Need to swear you in. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And give us your name, spell your last name.
Amato, A-M-A-T-O.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Amato, you presently, your family owns the brick house, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how long has your family owned that particular business?
Mr. Sachs, can you give her the microphone also?
I have
Okay.
one. Is that good?
Yes.
I'm not used to this.
Okay, so my question was, how long has your family owned that establishment?
I am co-owner with my sister Mary Ann and my brother Wally. We've, along with our parents, we've owned for 67 years.
All right, so you've owned it since 1952?
Correct.
And what is the nature of the business of the brick house? What do you do, and what type of facilities do you have in there?
It's a local hometown bar and grill. We serve burgers and beers.
Right, so you serve food and you serve alcohol?
Exactly.
Okay, all right. And in terms of the types of deliveries that occur to this site, how many tractor trailers per week come into this location?
2.
So there's 2 tractor trailers that come in per week. And what type of goods are they offloading off of those tractor trailers?
U.S. Foods comes in and they bring in all our food.
Okay.
It usually takes them 30 to 45 minutes.
All right, and what are the hours that those delivery trucks are unloading?
They're usually coming between 12 or 5 p.m.
All right, so between 12 and 5 p.m. And where do you have a specific loading zone in your parking lot?
No, we have no loading zone. It's wherever the cars aren't or our customers aren't, that's where they park.
All right, and how long does it take them to unload those vehicles?
30 to 45 minutes.
Okay. And what about alcohol deliveries? How do those occur?
We have about 7 a week, beer and liquor. They come most days between 12 and 5 also.
Okay, and what type of trucks are they utilizing for those deliveries?
Those are those trucks that like...
Pull-up trucks, Coca-Cola truck,
Yeah.
high-grade beverage truck?
Yes.
Okay, Budweiser truck? Okay. A little bit smaller than a tractor trailer?
Sometimes those box trucks.
Okay. All right, what are the hours of operation for the brick house?
We open at 11:30 and we close at 2 a.m.
And is that 7 days a week?
7 days a week.
Okay. And do you have live music on site on occasion?
On occasion, we do have live music. We, in the past, had more live music than more recently, but on occasion, yes.
All right. All right. Let's talk about activity that occurs in the parking lot. Obviously, you're serving alcohol. I mean, I'm sure you don't serve patrons who are really intoxicated, but people do walk out of that parking lot in an intoxicated condition. Is that correct? All right. And has that created problems in the parking lot?
At times, yes, we've had fights in the parking lot. You know, boyfriends and girlfriends are fighting, friends are fighting. People come into our place, and you never know what condition they're in. Anyone can walk in the door, so we're really, you don't know how people will act when they're intoxicated.
All right. And some of that conduct occurs very late at night?
Yes.
In fact, it generally occurs late at night.
Yes.
I'm referring to the old saying that nothing good ever happens at 2 a.m.
There you go.
Okay. I'm sure Mr. Green would agree with me on that as a police officer. Okay. All right. In terms of police activity at your site,
In the past, we probably had more police activity. I think in more present years, it's really kind of subsided. We really defer that.
all right, but in terms of the police activity, have there been arrests that have occurred on site?
Absolutely.
And has that been for what type? Disorderly conduct?
Yes.
Drunken activity? Okay. Have there been arrests for DWI on the site?
Yes.
Okay. How many parking spaces do you have on the site?
I'd say 45.
Okay. And are they striped?
Some are.
Some are, some are not?
Some aren't.
Okay. All right, I know that you'd like to tell the board one of the the reasons why you're looking to sell the business and to sell the property, and I know you've got a prepared statement, so I'll let you read it.
Thank you. My mom and dad had a dream in 1952. They called it Kelly's Bar. It was my dad's nickname. They raised a family. They ran a small business. It was not only our house, but it was our home. My brother and I were born there. My mom would cook dinner for us, and my dad would offer a plate to the customers. My dad taught my brother how to golf in the backyard. When I was 9 years old, I poured my first beer there. My brother, my sister, and I lived at 267 until we were married. Over the last 50 years, we all worked there and ran the business. We celebrated our birthdays, our anniversaries, holidays, and births at 267. We grieved the loss of our mom, dad, and baby sister there. We watched each of our 6 children there work there, some as early as the age of 5, and some until the present. Nobody here is more sad than we are, but my sister, who is currently the face of Brick House, will be 69 years old. She wants to retire to her yard and her activities to support the Sterville community. As the loss of my mom hit us all very deeply, it hit her extremely hard. Being self-employed, my brother and sister have no pension, no retirement income. I'm a high school teacher. I do have a retirement pension. So now we as a family have to focus on taking care of our future. Brick House has served us well. We have supported the Sterville community, and we're asking them to help us and support us now. I still have more, I'm sorry. Whether we sell to CVS or not, we are retiring. We are aware our business is valued in this community, and we appreciate that. And many people are hoping if this deal does not go through that we will stay. Unfortunately, that's not true. If this deal is denied tonight, the for sale sign may be on the lawn tomorrow. Moreover, if the sale to CVS is denied, we will most likely sell to another establishment who will sell alcohol, and they, however, will not need anyone's approval to run their business. As a result, the community could be subjected to a business who will not maintain the property like my sister does, or run an upstanding business like my sister does. We've been approached by different types of businesses in the past, and we have not entertained selling because they were not reputable businesses. However, since we are looking to retire, we will be open to all offers. As Brick House, we have been honored to be a part of our loyal employees' lives as well as our valued patrons, most of whom have become like family. We've celebrated weddings, engagements, anniversaries, and births with them. One couple even brought their newborn baby from the hospital to Brick House before going home. We've had the privilege of being a part of so many special events in people's lives, as well as grieving with them over the loss of their loved ones. We've opened our doors on Christmas and Thanksgiving to many who did not have a family and offered them a meal. There's a saying I've been using these days, doing what is right doesn't always feel good, and for sure, this is going to be our greatest loss. Not just the building, but the people that we have come to know and love as family and friends. In closing, CVS approached us. It's a good company with good values. Values we know that will serve the community well. We want to be proud to sell our home to someone with good values, rather than to a business who may not have the values for our neighbors and our community. While some in the community may not agree, I know my mom and dad Carmelita and Walter would have approved of our decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Donna. I have two other questions, and because you mentioned it to me earlier this evening. In terms of the insurance costs that you have to face now in this climate of litigation, have the insurance costs astronomically increased for
Yes.
liability coverage because you serve alcohol?
Yes, it's not the days of a mom and pop business that we're used to running. Things have really increased tremendously.
And just your overall liability, fear of lawsuits
Yes.
and things of
Yes,
that nature?
absolutely.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything further.
I have nothing further to ask you. Does any of the board have anything you want to ask?
I do. Your personal statement, was that your idea, or is that?
Although that was mine. I actually wrote a whole big thing that I didn't get a chance to read because he wanted to ask me questions. So I cut out like half of it. But it was about 10 minutes and it was all, yeah, my idea.
No editing came from this side.
Mr. Sachs, I do have a comment that I want to make in reference to what you said here tonight. Mr. Sachs, you probably have this report. It's dated July the 23rd, 2019. It's to the board, and it's from the Chief of Police.
Yes.
There's one little part that I want to read to you that the chief mentioned, and you touched on it considerably tonight. And here's what he says. For perspective, the Brick House Bar and Grill, a local pub and eatery, generates minimal police service calls. From 2016 to the present, there's been 36 calls for service. Most of these calls were related to customer issues, first aid, and alarm responses. In general, the number of service calls to the Brick House is comparable to similar businesses in the borough of Serval. Additionally, there were only 4 motor vehicle accident collisions on the property. Your business, for the years that you've been there, have been excellent. I mean, as far as a service to the community. And we respect that and we understand that. And I know the Brick House has been there for years. So it's not a situation where your bar is a hindrance to the borough of Serval. Your calls were minimal, and you were a good neighbor there. And I just want to get that on the record that you did a commendable job with the Brick House.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a follow-up question on that. And I think Mr. Green's comment off of the chief's report is consistent with what you've testified to. There, obviously, I know you run a good business, but there has been police activity there. Is there presently a wrongful death suit that was filed against you and the property owner next door?
Yes.
And
No.
not the property, but against, for an incident that occurred on your site, though?
Yes.
And that was for someone who was trying to traverse the back of that property? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
I have one question. When you say you get courted by other restaurateurs and stuff, is that pretty consistent?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Courted, meaning that people looking to buy your property, to use it as a restaurant, make it something different, but still in that vein?
No, they're more establishments we'd rather not sell to.
Give me an example. What do you mean, like what?
Like like a strip bar, not strip, but that kind of an establishment. We've had an offer from those in the past. We also had.
That's it? Only
we also
strip
had-
clubs?
We had Stadium Sports Bar. We had someone come in and they ran the business for 3 months and we were looking to sell to them, and that was 10 years ago. It was a disaster. And we took the business back, took their name off, and stopped that. And that was that was a rough time because they ripped our whole building apart. And we took many years of time and money to put the place back together.
Okay,
They
thank
wanted to
you.
block up all the windows. They didn't want any light coming. They wanted to rip out the fireplace where we grew up. I mean, that was our house. That dining room was our house that we grew up in. And that's when I was like, no, I called my sister. I said, we gotta stop this. They can't do that.
Mhm. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No other questions.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more witness, and my presentation is concluded. So if I can call Christine Cafone as our professional planner.
Ms. Capone, you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And please give us your name and spell your last name.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. It's Christine Nazaro, Nazzaro, Cafone, C-O, F as in Frank, O-N-E. Business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701.
Ms. Cafone, if you can give the board the benefit of your educational and professional background.
Yes, good evening. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been qualified here as an expert witness in Sayreville and before about 450 other planning and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey. I've been practicing for about 24 years as a planning consultant, so I spend a lot of time appearing before planning and zoning boards. I'm also an adjunct instructor for the Rutgers Center for Government Services, where I teach planning and zoning courses.
We make a motion to
Submit.
accept your credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cafone, before you get into your testimony, if you can just indicate what documentation you reviewed in connection with providing your analysis this evening.
Of course. So I reviewed the application submission documents, so that means, is this picking me up? I feel like it's not. So that means our plans that we prepared, your professional review letters, both the planner and the engineer. I visited the subject property on several occasions. We've had a couple of prep meetings to go over our submission documents. In addition to that, I reviewed your zoning ordinance here in Sayreville, and I had an opportunity to look at the master plan. So the typical things that we do for any variance that we're testifying on. So I did all of that in conjunction with the subject application.
All right, so if you can give your analysis of the variance relief that's being sought in connection with this application.
Yes, we are here seeking a D1 use variance because the use as proposed, why it sits in the R7 PRG on its northwestern quadrant and R10 zone with the office service overlay, we're not a permitted use in that zone. So the OS overlay allows for a variety of commercial uses, medical offices, some retail establishments, but it does not specifically allow a retail pharmacy as a permitted use, so we need a D1 use variance. So that leaves us with in addition to that D1 use variance, we need a parking variance because your ordinance, the way your ordinance is written with respect to parking is if there's no standard, you use the closest similar use. So our entire store is subject to the parking requirements for retail. So that is why the parking requirement of 75 is applied to this, because it's really the closest conforming, if you will, use. So we need a variance for parking and a variance for use to be here. In addition to that, we went over earlier, Mr. Grisco went over the 7 waivers that we're requiring or we're requesting in conjunction with this application, the lion's share of which result from the 3 property frontages and the landscaping. So as a non-inherently beneficial use, we have an obligation to demonstrate to the board that we meet the statutory criteria. The statutory criteria for a D1 use variance does not require that we demonstrate to you that there's a need in this location. What the requirements are for the burden of proof is that we demonstrate to you that the site is suitable, particularly suitable for this location. Nor do we have to establish, and particular suitability is kind of an elusive term. It's not really defined in the land use law. What it means is there something about this particular property that's particularly suitable for the proposed use? So I would submit to the board that it is particularly suitable. It's a corner lot. It's a large lot. It's 5 times larger than the permitted lot size for the zone. And it's certainly, it's got varying topography, which makes it certainly ideal for a commercial use, There's an existing wall on the property which provides an excellent buffer to our residential neighbors to the north. So I do think that the site is particularly suitable for the proposed retail pharmacy. In addition to particular suitability, we have to demonstrate that one or more purposes of the land use law would be advanced by the grant of the D variance. And those purposes of the land use law, they're not unique to Sayreville, they come right out of the land use law at 40:55 D-2. We would have to advance one or more of those. One certainly satisfies the statutory criteria. I would submit that while not an inherently beneficial use, we certainly promote the general welfare. As you heard earlier witness testify, the lion's share of the pharmacy, the retail, use is dedicated to the pharmacy, providing prescriptions for the health and welfare of the proposed customers. I also think that we satisfy criteria H, which talks about providing for the free flow of traffic. Mr. Peradroit, when the last time we were here together over the summer, talked about how we were providing a turning lane along Washington Road to facilitate turning movements into the subject property. And we're also providing for some right-of-way dedication along Washington Road. So the other thing that he talked about was that there are uses that are permitted as of right in the OS overlay zoning district that would have very similar traffic patterns than what we're proposing in conjunction with our CVS retail store. So I certainly think the board can rely on criteria H. And then the last one that I think the board can rely on is criteria I, which talks about a desirable visual environment. Both at our last hearing together, as well as this evening, we presented to you architecture. Our original architecture was a little bit more modern. Mr. Barry, in his review of the application, raised some issues with respect to the architecture and some of the architectural requirements. So what we did was we switched over to a more colonial feature, and we added things like the horizontal hardy plank, the brick water table, and the mansard roof to give it a more warm feel and a more colonial. So I think the board can certainly rely on criteria I. And I also think the board can rely on criteria G, which talks about sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. I think that there's certainly, this is an appropriate location, while not a specifically permitted use in the zone. I will talk to the board a little bit more about my experience in planning and when you break down, and I'll get into this in the negative criteria, but when you really break down the zoning and what was tried to be prohibited here, I don't think that a retail pharmacy is what the board was looking to prohibit. A lot of my practice, my personal practice of doing planning testimony is spent in the convenience store. So I have a lot of experience that I've represented literally dozens of convenience store providers, and I don't think that this is at all similar to a convenience store. While we provide for a variety of goods and services, it's certainly not consistent with my experience, and I've represented the lion's share of convenience store providers throughout the state of New Jersey. So I think the board can certainly rely on criteria G. So when you look at the office service zone overlay, which is why we're here, because there's stated purpose of that zoning district. So I'm really shifting my focus right now on the burden of proof to the negative criteria. So going along the lines now of the burden of proof that we have to demonstrate, when you're dealing with a use variance, you have to demonstrate the negative criteria. The negative criteria really has two prongs to it. We have to demonstrate that we're not going to have a substantial negative impact on either the zone plan or the public good. And the land use law does not ask you to hold us or any other applicant to such a standard that we demonstrate to you that there are absolutely no benefit, that there are absolutely no detriments, just that the benefits of the grant of the variance would outweigh any detriment. So the standard of proof is certainly one of a balancing act to balance the positive and negatives, not to hold any applicant to a standard of proof that there be absolutely no negative impacts. So when you look at the stated purpose, and this comes right out of your ordinance, this overlay district is intended to provide a reasonable use of land for non-residential purposes while maintaining a residential presence, and is in addition to the regulations of and is an overlay on the otherwise existing zones in which these properties are shown. So when I read that, it certainly, in my opinion, the application that's before you this evening certainly provides a reasonable use of the land for non-residential purposes. It eliminates an existing zoning nonconformity on the site that certainly has the potential to create much more of a negative impact. And then when you go on, it lists the permitted uses in the OS zone are businesses and professional offices, barber shops and beauty shops and similar service establishments, retail sales. And then when you get to the last one, the way it reads is retail sales of the followings: books, stationery, arts and crafts, cut flowers, antiques, recreational equipment, entertainment and sports tickets. And then it reads, in no case shall any use be permitted which involves the sale of food or drinks, including but not limited to restaurants, snack bars, convenience stores, and ice cream parlors. So the OS zone goes to the lens to specifically say that those are the type of uses that they don't want here. So you don't define convenience store in your ordinance, but you do define restaurants, and you have a definition for drive-in restaurants and other type of restaurants. So that prohibition, where it talks specifically about providing food and drink, is not, in my opinion, talking about a store that might have some variety of prepackaged goods and services and foods. And then when you don't have a definition in your ordinance, one of the things that we go to as planners, and I'm sure, like myself, Mr. Barry keeps a copy close hand in his office, in his car, is the Illustrated Book of Development Definitions. So I am looking at the 4th edition of the Complete Illustrated Book of Development Definitions because I wanted to look at the definition for retail store convenience. Because the prohibition, and in my experience, what a convenience store is nothing like this proposed CVS, because the trend and the convenience store market have fresh prepared foods, places to sit down. If you go into any of the newer Quick Checks, they have seating both inside and out of the store to consume the sandwiches, the salads, the soups that you're getting made to order on the site. And when you look in the illustrated definition, the Illustrated Book of Development Definitions for a retail store convenience, a retail establishment of up to 5,000 square feet, selling primarily food products, beverages, newspapers, and magazines, candies, cigarettes, household items, and a limited amount of freshly prepared foods as sandwiches and salads. So it's a place that is engaged in primarily food products. That's absolutely not the application that you have before you this evening. Can you get cereal there? Sure. Peanut butter, some cookies, absolutely. Chips, candy. You can certainly buy food items there, but it is not at all consistent with what I would consider my experience in the convenience store market. Having represented Quick Check, Wawa, and many of the other providers, I would say that there's nothing similar of the subject application to a convenience store. Then when you take the same Illustrated Book of Definitions and you look at a pharmacy, it defines pharmacy as a place where drugs and medicines are prepared and dispensed. And then in the legal annotation in the description there, it states a pharmacy may also offer other retail goods in addition to prescription pharmaceuticals. And I think that that's exactly what you have here. You have a pharmacy that sells other goods. There are arts and crafts here. There are books here. There are magazines here, greeting cards. And those are the type of things that are the other retail goods and services that I would find to be absolutely consistent with the OS service zone, because it specifically says retail, books. So I think that there's really, in my opinion, as a professional planner, nothing objectionable about the subject application, because it is not a convenience store. It is not a food-related use, like I believe that the ordinance was looking to restrict, where it talks about snack bars, ice cream parlors. Those would be more like QSR, quick service restaurant type of uses. So as far as an impairment of the zone plan, I don't see one. This is not a residential zone. I think given the character of the area, this is not a exclusively residential area. Yes, we have a very, very nice and stable residential community to our north. However, to our east, we have a gasoline filling station and a automobile service station. We have a service station across the street from us to our south. So this is certainly not, it's a mix of uses in the area. There are also some single-family homes along Washington Road, but certainly you have some more commercial intensive uses in there. So to say that we're going to have a substantial negative impact on the zoning plan for the type of use that we're proposing with the hours of operation, the elimination of the bar, which is the bar and restaurant, which is a non-conforming use and specifically prohibited in the OS overlay zone. I think that this application will absolutely not have a substantial detriment on the public good or the zone plan. I see it really as a benefit in that it eliminates a non-conforming use and it allows you to develop the subject property in accordance with the vision for the OS service overlay zone, which talked about some reasonable commercial use here. So the other thing so as far as the Medici reconciliation, I don't think that there's any impairment of the zone plan if you were to allow this retail pharmacy to go here, because I don't think it's dissimilar than the type of retail uses that were envisioned for this area. So when you look at the reconciliation of the master plan and what the master plan was trying to accomplish, Mr. Barry cites some goals and objectives in your master plan. In his, a date on this, in his July 17th report, he talks about the master plan, specifically, I believe it's the 2013 master plan, and he talks about some of the goals and objectives in there. So he talks about the intrusion of commercial uses into residential areas. This is not a residential area, it's a commercially zoned piece of property, so I see no issue with the master plan goal of examining all residential zone boundaries to protect residential uses. This is, again, Washington Road, a fairly busy road. There is another goal, number 2, talks about continuing to encourage aesthetic and site improvements in the borough's major commercial and industrial areas. The site that's today lacks really any type of formal landscaping. While we do need some waivers for the landscaping plan, we are certainly providing a perimeter buffer. In addition to the landscaping, we're also providing a white vinyl fence along our northern property line. So I think aesthetically, we have considered that. And also, while we're not meeting the overall percentage of landscape area, I think we're just about 18%. What's interesting is that your ordinance allows up to 85% impervious coverage in this zoning district. So we are not quite at 85%, we're at about 81%. So we are just shy on the landscape coverage, but we do provide for greenery along all of the frontages, which I think is certainly a benefit and enhances the curb appeal. In the land use plan element, Mr. Barry points out that the types of uses in non-residential districts were evaluated to reflect the type of development and redevelopment most appropriate of the respective districts, and that existing design and development standards were evaluated in recommendation to encourage high-quality development. I think this is absolutely a high-quality development. I think the architecture has been revised to be very compatible and sympathetic to what you were looking for in the OS district. So again, I see not as a detriment, but certainly as an opportunity to advance some of these goals in your master plan, which talk about making sure that the commercial development goes into appropriate locations. So taken together, I think we certainly substantiate our burden of proof for the grant of a use variance. Again, that burden of proof requires us to demonstrate that the site is particularly suitable, to demonstrate that special reasons exist. Those are the purposes of the land use law. I cited 4. Statutorily, we need to advance only 1. To reconcile the Medici reconciliation of the omission of the use and what the zone contemplated, and then to evaluate the negative criteria on balance. And that negative criteria, like I said, includes the 2 prongs. So I think certainly, in my opinion as a professional planner, I am very comfortable to conclude here that I see no substantial detriment to the public good or the zone plan. Again, we closed off the Downs Drive in order to try to be more accommodating and more considerate of the neighbors who did not want us to have that driveway, to avoid the headlights going into the single-family homes to our north and back of us. I say it's in back, it's our northern property line. So I think all in all, you have a case where you are balancing, and that's what land use is. You balance the impacts and our commercial developments. Our commercial zones are here to stabilize our tax bases and stabilize the economic generators for our community. And I think here you have a use that does that, and it certainly considers the purpose and intent of your OS overlay zoning district.
Ms. Capone, just a couple follow-up questions. I know you heard the testimony this evening of Mr. Skirpy from CVS and Ms. Amato from the Brick House. You heard the testimony specifically with Mr. Skirpy that it's pretty much industry standard to use a 2-mile radius, and according to him, there's 3 pharmacies, 1 in South River, 2 in Sayreville within a 2-mile radius, although Mr. Emmer probably tells me I missed one, but
Actually on the map.
that's all right. I'll take your word on it. But with 29,000 residents combined in South River and Sayreville, and maybe even a portion of South Amboy servicing within that 2-mile radius, is it your opinion that this particular use fills a need in the community?
It does, and I would trust that CVS does marketing studies. They're a successful provider in the health and beauty industry, and they believe that this is an appropriate location and that there is a need here. While I do not dispute, I drive the area on a regular basis, there are other pharmacies, and I believe he said there were 3 independents in the area. But there are other providers along similar scale, if you will, of the CVS, like more of a Walgreens and not an independent, that are a couple miles from the site. But their business model is they take their businesses, their customer base primarily from a 2-mile radius, and they believe that there is a need here at this location. And I think the data supports that is that many of the pharmacies, and I went in a couple of them as well to see what was in the area, and you simply cannot compare the independents to the product line that's available at the CVS. So I'm not disputing that there are 4 of them within a 2-mile radius, but like I said, CVS certainly has a demonstrated history of success, and they believe that based on their research that there is a need for this proposed pharmacy at this location.
All right, and in terms of Ms. Amato's testimony, I think she testified that there's 2 tractor trailers that come into her site presently. We have 1 tractor trailer proposed at CVS. She gets 7 other deliveries by larger trucks and box trucks, probably equivalent to what we have. And the hours of operation, she testified to go till 2 a.m., and obviously this site is closed much earlier. Can you
Yes.
briefly comment on that?
Yes, it has far less, and again, I understand that her use operates more of a restaurant, and the police chief, I read that review letter, that he finds it to not be a particularly obnoxious use in town, but they're retiring, and you don't know, another restaurant operator could go in there tomorrow that's open till 2 a.m. and could operate the business in a much different fashion than she does. So I think that the pharmacy is a far more compatible use, not only with this neighborhood, but also with your OS zoning. The use that she's operated today is specifically discouraged in the zone. So to say that this use comes far closer into conformance with your zone plan is an absolute statement of fact, in my opinion, since the use, with no disrespect to your use, you're a long-time permitted use, and your family has clearly run a reputable business, but it is exactly the type of business that the OS zone specifically uses language to discourage. So from a planning point of view and establishing consistency with your zone plan, the application that you have before you tonight is far more consistent. The last thing that I want to just go back to the number of pharmacies. Zoning is not supposed to control the marketplace. So the fact that there are other providers in the industry is no different than if you had a neighborhood commercial zone and you had a pizza parlor on one corner, your zoning officer is not going to deny a building permit for a pizza parlor on the other corner because it's a permitted use. And probably the reason we don't have to demonstrate need as a burden of proof for the D1 variance is because The zoning is not to control the marketplace. Despite that, we thought it was important because Mr. Barry raised it in his review letter, and we knew that the board had concerns. And you want the use to be viable, and you want the business to be successful. It's your town, and you want your commercial, as I said, your commercial districts serve an important part to the overall health of the community. They stabilize the tax base, and they're a great economic generator. And I think the board can be very comfortable that CVS vets their sites and they look at these things and they consider things, you know, beyond what we would consider here, I'm sure, to consider whether they want to invest the financial and to make it a successful site. And they believe that there is a need here in this location for this type of retail pharmacy.
Thank you, Ms. Caffone.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a comment. When you talk about the 2 mile radius, that piece that's in South River, it represents pretty significantly. And I think there's a miss on the boat here as far as thinking that those people are gonna travel over the South River Bridge to come up Washington Avenue. I don't think that's really part of the market, so I kind of dispute that 29,000. Nobody likes to go over that bridge, only as much as they have to. It's a speed trap.
You know, I'm not sure what percentage of the 29,000 comes from over that
Just looking
bridge.
at the colors,
Say it again?
just looking at the colors.
Any questions?
I do. So you're saying that CVS is not a convenience store? That's what you're,
Absolutely. I'm saying it's not a convenience store.
what does the C in CVS stand for?
I'm not sure what does this stand for. Right? I don't know.
Consumer.
Consumer.
That's what I thought. Consumer value stores?
So I did a quick Wikipedia search, convenience value service. So just doing a quick Wikipedia search,
Mr. Emma, consumer value service, not convenience, consumer.
and they may have it wrong, but it also states that during the company's days as a regional chain in the Northeast, many of the CVS stores did not include pharmacies. They were more convenience than pharmacy.
That may have been in the past, but obviously, I think the business model now, and I think we could almost probably take judicial notice, Mr. Kem, that CVS's, Walgreens, Rite Aids, they're pharmacies. I think a convenience store is a 7-Eleven, a Quick Check, you know, that's,
That, Mr. I would love to answer that because I spend a lot of my practice testifying on convenience stores, 7-Eleven, Wawa, Quick Check, and the brand of convenience store has quick service restaurant aspect to it, where any of the modern convenience stores that we represent in my office, and we have literally done dozens of applications. So while I can appreciate your Wikipedia definition, I can tell you as one of the planning consultants who probably represents the lion's share of convenience store applications in the state of New Jersey, and including ones that have gone up to the appellate division, I can tell you that this is not, in my opinion, as a professional planner who has literally testified on hundreds of applications in the state of New Jersey. So I am incredibly familiar with what the convenience store market is doing in the state of New Jersey, because that is a lot of my practice is that. This is not a convenience store.
So would you?
It's just not, it's not consistent with what a convenience store is functioning as in the state, in my opinion.
That can always change now. If I can buy the same items, then what percentage, what are you talking about?
But you can't though, because a convenience store is something that sells fresh prepared items. I would imagine if we were successful here tonight and you were to approve this use variance, I would imagine the resolution of approval is going to be very specific that we represented to you that we don't have that aspect of our business, so that if that were to change and we were to go more of a convenience store, then we would have to come back and get another use variance because the zone doesn't allow it, and that's not our business model. Our business model is primarily a pharmacy with other ancillary retail goods. It's not a convenience store, and we don't sell lottery. We don't sell many of the items that a typical convenience store. So somebody who travels the state of New Jersey and goes into a Quick Check the items, the line of items they would find there if they're looking for cheese sticks, fresh items, or fresh salads, fresh soups, fresh sandwiches. You're not going to find those in our pharmacy.
What's the square footage percentage between the retail part of the store and the pharmacy part of the store?
I don't know the answer to that.
Can anybody answer that?
Can we have a witness answer that
Because
question?
I would assume that the retail part of the store is huge compared to the pharmacy part.
Mr. Sachs,
But the
can-
business, the witness told you the business
You know, if it
is.
walks like a duck, talks like a duck, I mean, it's.
Mr. Sachs, can you get somebody to answer that question
We'll
first?
provide that answer for you. Yeah, that's fine. I have a question for Ms. Cofone, just to follow up from Mr. Emma. Does CVS sell coffee?
They do not. That's.
All right. I mean, I go to Wawa every morning and get my coffee. I can get the same coffee at a Quick Check. I can get the same coffee at a 7-Eleven.
On the run.
And that's the
Now,
definition. So with
I'm not suggesting, Mr. Emma, I'm not suggesting that, but, I mean, obviously, Ms. Cofone has testified as to what she considers to be a convenience store versus what she considers to be a
Can I
farm.
buy a soda at Wawa? Can I buy a soda at?
You can buy a soda at an Exxon gas station as well. I don't think we consider that to be a pharmacy or a convenience store necessarily.
You can buy a soda at a car wash. So I think that's not, it's, again, I think the coffee, the salads, the sandwich is more of a typical convenience store.
Mr. Chairman,
And you've been to a Wawa, and you've been to a Quick Check, and you've been to a 7-Eleven, so you know that that's very dissimilar. While you can pick out any number of items that you might be able to find that are similar, you can certainly understand and appreciate that they're also very different, I'm sure.
And Mr. Chairman, we'll get that information. We have to look at the architecturals, but we can get you the breakdown of what constitutes the pharmacy versus the balance of the store.
Okay. Is your testimony complete?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sachs?
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation. So certainly, I know there's quite a bit of the public here.
Yes.
And I'm sure you want to open it up, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one question quickly. I guess the CVS, was it Mr. Serpi? Serpi, could you just explain what you meant when you said you have between 2,000 and 3,000 transactions a day? Is that individuals, or is that like cash registers, ring-ups, or what does that mean?
That means, if you want to stand up, that means someone going up front and purchasing something.
So you're saying between 2,000 and 3,000 people a day come into the store?
I mean,
Okay.
somebody could purchase something in the pharmacy and purchase something in the front store, so that would constitute two different transactions.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move on, Mr. Chairman, my concern is the size, and I don't know, John, if you can answer this, but what is the intent of the zone in terms of neighborhood size of businesses? Because to me, this looks like it's very large, you know, so many parking spaces and drive-through. So could you make a comment on that in terms of?
Sure. Ms. Capone's testimony focused generally on the use, which is what she's primarily here to talk about. The overlay zone is a little bit different from a standard commercial zone in that residential uses are the primary zoning for the properties. Then we have an overlay that allows a very narrowly defined group of commercial uses. And then in both the purpose and the architectural standards associated within that zone, it talks about a residential character and a residential appearance, talks about how most of the buildings in the zone were originally constructed as single-family homes. And as we heard from Ms. Amato's testimony about the brick house, that was her childhood home as well as her family's business growing up. So that, while not a conforming use in the zone because a bar and a restaurant's not permitted, is consistent with that architectural character and that residential feel that the zone district talks about. So to answer whether or not the 14,000 odd square foot CVS fits in with a single-family residential character, I think the answer is not particularly, no matter how you dress it up. The size of the box is much different from what is anticipated in those architectural standards.
14,000 square feet is larger than the lot sizes there, right?
Right, under the underlying zoning, the lot sizes are less than, they're
Right, because it's
7,500 and
intended to
10,000
be
square foot.
residential.
Yes.
So, and as I think there was a key word there, you said primary residential, and the overlay is something that is allowed, but
Right, it
can't
was.
forget about the primary point.
Right, and it doesn't require that there be residential, but the zone does allow for residential, both as a principal use and as accessory apartments in the business uses. So you could run a shop and live above it. You could have a bar that you also use as your house. Yeah.
So would you be comfortable in saying that even though the type of business might technically fit, it's more than the type of business, it's the size of the business and the number of customers that might be coming through that also apply?
Well, without analyzing each of the potential uses in detail and comparing the number of customers, I think it's a matter of scale ultimately when we're talking about, and that's what the board has to reconcile with, particularly the negative criteria of the use variance, is setting aside the use. If you had a much smaller pharmacy, would that fit better than a pharmacy of this size? But then bringing the use back into it because it's not permitted, obviously. That's part of the reconciliation that the board needs to find with the negative criteria and the zone ordinance.
So that's a legitimate consideration of the zoning board members, is to consider the size.
I believe so.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a 10-minute break, and I'm going to open it up to the public, and we're going to start with the public for their comments. So 10-minute break as of now.
Just to resolve the issue of the square footage before we take the break, in the plans that were submitted with the application, there is a plan prepared by Larson Design Group with sheet number O-1. Maybe your engineer could go to that. It gives the store calculations in the upper center, just before we take a break. Thank you.
Okay, yes, referring to that outline plan that was prepared by Larson Design, that was part of everyone's package for the original submission, so everyone could see that.
Mr. Chairman, just so we identify, it's Mr. Grisco who's
Oh, yeah.
speaking.
Thank you,
again.
Larry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Grisco.
Right in that center portion of that plan, there's a breakdown. It says store area calculations. Retail area of the store, 10,902 square feet. And there's a parentheses there that says the pharmacy area is included in that. So the pharmacy area is identified underneath that as 1,382 square feet. So if you subtract that from the 10,000, that leaves 9,520 as retail area. Okay? There's a receiving area, part of that number, where they have their deliveries and they keep stock. There's a mezzanine portion, 1,712. As part of my original testimony, I had indicated that there is a mezzanine level along the rear of the building where they keep seasonal and additional overflow stock. And then that service area, again, for other portions of the store, when you add all that up, that gets you to the 14,823 square feet. That's the total building area. Again, the footprint of that, because we have a mezzanine, the footprint of that is 13,111 is the full footprint of the building.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Grisco, just one follow-up question on that issue. So the retail, you said, is calculated around 10,000 feet, 10,000 square feet?
It's actually less because
Yeah.
the retail area includes the pharmacy, so
Right.
when you do the math, you get down to 9,500 and change.
So the pharmacy, when we're talking about the pharmacy, we're talking about the prescription portion of the pharmacy.
That is correct.
All right. And the balance of the retail, the majority of that is devoted to over-the-counter products.
The retail areas are over-the-counter products, aspirin, other medical aids, bandages, things of that nature, health and beauty items. That's part of that 9,520 square feet. The pharmacy area does not include all of those other over-the-counter items that are in the aisles.
Right, and his testimony before from the representative of CVS, the retail also includes grocery items, candy, greeting cards, not just health and beauty aids, not just over-the-counter
Correct,
medication.
that is part of that. But in that, there are other medical-type aids that you can get without, as we know from all going to pharmacies, you can get without seeing the pharmacist.
And in your experience doing these, have you seen convenience stores that also sell over-the-counter medications, such as aspirin?
They do have certain ones, but on a limited basis.
Greeting cards on occasion?
Occasion, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. I'd just like to make a correction. When I said the C and CVS standard for convenience, I was wrong. What I read really quick was the CEO, Tom Ryan, said that he considers CVS convenience value service.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 10-minute break.
The overall bill
was 14.8. 14.8.
14.8.
Not a problem. Maria Catala. Oh, I can see at the next council meeting. Who's going to Michael? Public hadn't even had a chance to get in.
Was right? Getting I think testing.
And the spelling's correct.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stand up for this.
Okay, good.
We're doing it. All right, we're gonna get this thing going.
Let's go. Let's rock and roll.
Oh, yes.
All those fucking people.
I'm still amazed with no sonography. Type it. It's like
Which what? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll get you. And Mike Walsh never came, so don't even start.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we get started? Ladies and gentlemen, can we get started?
Yo!
Yo.
Okay, we're going to open it to the public. Anyone who wants to speak, will they please come up to the microphone and be sworn in and give us your name and your address?
Good evening, sir. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
And give us your name, spell your last name.
My name is Bruce Kent. My last name is spelled K-E-N-T.
And your address, sir?
I'm a resident of Sayville. I live in Town Lake, 7 Yetman Court.
Thank you. Please continue.
7 Yetman, Y-E-T-M-A-N, man.
Yeah.
Court.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
You have the microphone in?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, the other microphone.
Okay,
That's
that's
better.
That one works better, yeah. Thank you.
Guys, I'm here along with my neighbors. I am a vocal guy, and I want to thank you, 10 gentlemen, for spending the time with us. It's been hard on us, knowing that CVS is coming there. I'm going to start off by saying we frequent the brick house. I get it. I get it. But as the family stated, and I'm compassionate towards them, I have 2 children in the back, Bryce and Lacey, that are 12 and 14. I want to see them grow up to be 50 in that house also, just like the family at the brick house had the opportunity to do. I get it. I'd like to, maybe we could zone that to be another sub shop. She mentioned the for sale sign. Put that out. CVS is giving quite a bit of money from what I understand. Over $1 million, correct me if I'm wrong, for that property. It's a lot of money to go off into retirement with. I was a police officer for 30 years, the Port Authority, probably one of the biggest police departments in the country. And I listened to your expert witness before. I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of accident reports. I retired, and guess what? I have 2 kids, I have to still work. I get it. I found another job, so whatever the brick house is gonna sell for, I wish them the best of luck. We're not here about the brick house. We're here about the property in CVS. I've done thousands of accident reports in my career. I might not have Ms. Capone, the planner. I might not have all the certificates over my fireplace and the textbooks, but I lived it. I lived thousands of accidents at the Holland, the Lincoln, the George Washington Bridge, Staten Island bridges. I've lived it. 9/11, I've lived it all. And I'm telling you, gentlemen, I live there right around the corner from the brick house. Well, let's say where CVS is trying to go. And I live around the corner. My kids catch the bus right outside every morning. Talk to the school crossing guard. She's right there at the brick house. Wonderful woman for years. Guys, we don't need CVS on that corner. I want to see my kids grow up. And another point, I went into my pharmacy, Sayville Pharmacy. I saw my pharmacist here somewhere today. Believe it or not, I have high blood pressure. For my high blood pressure pills, my wife told me bring home milk and eggs and whatever the guy's got to bring home. I had to go to Wawa for it. You know why? Because Sayville Pharmacy is not a convenience store. Hey, I'm not done. I don't want to be the hero here. I'm paying $15,000 a year in tax to live there. $1,400 something a month. I have no property, but I'm going to have a CVS. I see constant near misses on that corner of accidents. We see head-ons over there. We see everything. The Sayville police, they're there all the time. They're there all the time. The gentleman here says, where are you? This guy here, the regional guy for CVS, says you go in there, 15% of the stores. No way, man, no way. I go out of there, I'm going out of there with $50. Convenience, it's a convenience. I get in my car, I make a right, I make a left. Within 5 minutes, I'm over the South River Bridge, or I'm over the South Amboy Bridge. I go that way, I have Walgreens and the other one down there, Rite Aid. I make a right, I go towards over the bridge. I'm there in 2 minutes. 2 minutes I'm there. He said that we have 29,000 residents. 29,000 residents in 2 miles. I don't know where you're living, but there's 45,000 residents in this whole town, and the town is 18 miles square. It took me 15 seconds to Google that on the way here tonight. Hello? Okay. Well, I'm directing you towards you, sir, because you're the attorney for CVS. I'm not going to get into a match.
No, if you want, do you want me to answer, if you'd like me to answer a question?
I'll direct it to you if I want to ask it. I'm just putting it in your direction. Guys, please, I get it, man, I get it. You guys put a Chase Bank by Pizza Hut. Please, you're 10 guys, we depend on you. You know, we used to go there with the kids, have pizza, walk around the Kennedy Park. Can't do it no more. It's a Chase Bank. We shut down the Sayville Bar. Or you can eat mussels, right? We've all been there. It's a condo. We have nowhere in this town to go to eat. Please, we don't need another pharmacy in this town. My pharmacist over there, I could call him on a Sunday morning, 3 o'clock, and he's going to the store to open up. Hello?
Sir?
Sir,
All right, I'm finished. Guys, please.
Not directed
Direct
to
your
every-
attention.
All right, guys, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. I'm just over it. I'm over this whole thing with CVS. It's coming down to the bottom dollar. Who's going to give who what the most money? And that's what we're going to take, and that's what we're going to go with. And I don't appreciate it. We don't appreciate it. We want the safety of our children. Cars are going to be coming in there off of Washington and going out on Sayville Boulevard. I'm telling you, someone's going to get hurt. I hope it's not one of my kids or any one of my neighbors. So with that, happy holidays, guys. Please, please, please look into this and deny them the building permit to do it. Okay? Thank you. Have a great holiday.
Good evening, ma'am. You swear in? You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And give us your name, spell your last name?
My name is Sidra Rahan, that's S-I-D-R-A, last name is R-E-H-A-N,
And where do you live?
on 20 Mahalik Drive. 20 Mahalik, M-I-C-H-A-L-I-K.
Thank you. Please continue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As a resident of Sayreville and of Town Lake, I also am opposed to CVS coming into this space for various reasons. Two main points that I want to touch upon is one, the business aspect, and then the second, the human aspect. So first, in a 3.5 mile radius, we're looking at 2 ShopRites, 2 Walmarts, We're looking at independent pharmacies, looking at Walgreens, we're looking at Rite Aids. So not just does it look like a poor business decision to place a CVS where there are so much convenience stores, pharmacy, grocery stores available to the consumer. We're also looking at the value of the stores. So what value does CVS provide? Well, the pricing is not better than ShopRite. It's not better than Walmart. It's not better than many of the stores that we have. Convenience, to walk up to the corner of our community, I can order ShopRite from home. I don't need the convenience. Online pharmacies. There are so many online pharmacies that can deliver straight to your door. So where's the convenience in that with CVS? I'm a loyal consumer to my pharmacy and to my grocery stores. I'm not changing. So I don't know if many of the consumers here would either. We're looking at, it was said that our community is underserved by the CVS witnesses. If you go to any of these pharmacies at any given point of day, being that they are open majority 7 days a week, I don't see a line out the door. There are as many pharmacies and available time slots for consumers to go and pick up what they need when they need it without having to wait. We are not underserved at all. You want to talk about the small business aspect. This is going to affect the small businesses. The corner store at the end of the Main Street side, next to the gas station. Yes, if I want a milk in a rush or I need eggs, I'm going to go there if I really need to. But I'm not going to go to CVS because, like I said, I'm loyal to the grocers that I do go to. Let's dive into more so of the human aspect of this with the traffic coming in. So, okay, we changed the entranceway into the Sayreville Boulevard. I'd actually like to quote a statement from the CDC back in 2012 regarding motor vehicle-related injuries. Motor vehicle-related injuries are the leading cause of death for U.S. children ages 5 to 19. We're not even taking toddlers and infants into account here. These injuries account for 24% of deaths from all causes in this age group and for 63% of unintentional motor vehicle injury-related deaths. In addition, over 500,000 children were treated in hospitals in 2009 for non-fatal injuries from motor vehicle crashes. These children sustain injuries as motor vehicle occupants, bicyclists, motorcycle riders, and pedestrians. We are a community where we have children, neighbors, elderly, people leaving from work, going to school, constantly walking the sidewalks. We have a school bus stop and we have a corporate bus stop, or I should say, people that are going into the city or wherever the case at these bus stops. The name escapes me, but the engineer from CVS's side said, hopefully someone will look both ways before turning out. I'm not going to leave the safety of our children, of our neighbors, of our elderly on hope that other drivers are going to check both ways. The current people driving through our development these days, I've seen myself, they don't follow the roundabout, they go the wrong way. We've seen cars going to the wrong side of the lane because maybe they're not familiar, it's unclear which side they need to go on. Maybe they left Burke House, inebriated, who knows, no offense. But regardless, hoping that drivers that are whether familiar or unfamiliar with the area don't make an incorrect driving decision is not enough when there is a substantial increase of risk because of the CVS and the entrance that they propose here. It's going to bring in so many more people currently that don't live in Town Lake drive through because Washington's backed up with construction, Main Street's backed up because of the school schedules, and this potentially will increase the traffic going in and out. This past summer, actually right around the time of the last board meeting, there was an increase in recent car thefts within our development. So that's just, without a business at the corner, giving more exposure to the development. And I don't want to see that increase in the future either. The landscape, thank you, great idea. Let's make the landscape better around CVS, but who's going to increase the security in our development? Is that a part of the plan? Our taxes are paying our police officers. How will CVS contribute to that? if they were to be there. Street parking. I can almost guarantee you that whether the parking lot is full or not, if someone needs to make a quick run in, park on the street, get out of there, that's going to be disruptive to our neighbors. It's going to be disruptive to the children that are constantly there. There's a park down the street. My niece and nephew walk there themselves. It's not something I want to see anybody get hurt or the potential of hurt to be there. You know, we also touched on Brickhouse's operation, and we trust, I know Ms. Amato from high school, and I trust that they will pick the right company or the new owners to be there. We trust them in that. The patrons aren't going to change even if the establishment changes. And if they do change, they won't change by the vast increase that, you know, of nuisance that it was suggested earlier. As for truck deliveries, I know from my own career that truck deliveries aren't always on schedule, aren't always on time, and snow, rain, traffic may delay that. So we can't always say this truck is guaranteed to be here at this time of day on this day. It changes all the time. So it's not just an impact on Downs Drive either. You know, it's the amount of, like I said before, the amount of drivers that are constantly going in and out of our development. So, and then beside all of that, even before CVS is into play, what about the construction? How long are we going to be dealing with the construction before it's actually up and built, and then the rest of these risk factors are involved? You know, construction can get delayed as well, so there's not really a timeline that we can solidify. So there's, you know, along with these factors, and I'm sure a million other thought processes from the neighbors behind me, you know, I strongly urge that we consider the residents of this town and of this development and do not allow CVS to be a part of this. Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please give us your name, spell your last name.
Hina Patel, Patel.
And your address?
8 Whitehall Court.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Do you need to spell it? Oh, okay. Okay, I have my little speech ready. I would like to start off by saying that I'm not against any progress made in our town. And although we love our local small businesses, I think a CVS in town might be a convenience for me and my neighbors, as well as an asset to Sayreville. I work in the construction and development industry, so I want nothing more than to see good planning in our town. As a Town Lake resident, I need to see a better separation of commercial and residential uses for our neighborhood. This plan brings people who are not familiar with our neighborhood directly into our streets. We have many kids in our neighborhood that play outside and families that go for walks. In addition, there's the bus stops that people have previously mentioned. Based on the site plan, it just seems logical for many people to go out on Sayreville Boulevard and make the U-turn, especially if they want to make a left onto Washington. The proposed two-way lane stops almost immediately after the access when making a left turn, and it's just more convenient for people to make a left at a traffic light. There are many reasons for people to make this left onto Washington: the Parkway, the library, schools, ShopRite, and more. I haven't seen a drawing showing the truck turning radius, but it seems almost impossible for a truck to exit directly onto Washington Road because of the way the path is laid out. With the current site plan, the better route for a truck would be to go out Sayreville Boulevard. Not all customers, vendors, and employees that go to CVS would know how our neighborhood works. They don't know the bus stop locations or times, or that we have people going for walks or where our children play. You are telling them to come into our neighborhood, and God forbid, an accident happens due to this unfamiliarity. The interaction between the commercial and residential use needs to be resolved in a better way. Currently, to make a turn onto Washington out of Town Lake, the green light is delayed, there's a no turn on red sign, and it stays green for a very short period of time. I'm assuming these protocols are put in for driver safety and based on the current traffic pattern. Having extra vehicles on Sayreville Boulevard would make going out difficult because Sayreville Boulevard is just not meant to have cars queued up. When we first drove into Town Lake before purchasing our home, we instantly noticed the sense of community. There were so many people out and about enjoying the outdoors. The neighborhood is a quiet, safe place for our families, and we simply love it. I want our quality of life to be maintained by seeing a better separation of uses. As a family whose lives will be directly affected by this decision, I would hope you take my concerns into account. With that being said, there are some suggestions and questions I have. Instead of having an access directly into Town Lake, either on Sayreville Boulevard or Downs Drive, have two accesses on Washington, even if that means going back to the county, as previously mentioned in the summer. I think it would be worth the extra effort due to the extent of the situation. To block cars, lighting, noise, traffic, etc., I would like to see planting or a wall along Downs Drive, but I think a pedestrian access would be acceptable. Has there been an attempt to purchase the adjacent gas station so that two exits on Washington would be appropriate? Have all possible options been exhausted to prevent direct access into Town Lake? I would also like to see how trucks would be able to maneuver through the parking lot. Do you have a truck turning radius map? Will there be a sign for no trucks at the Sayreville Boulevard exit? And will there be police presence to enforce these regulations? I think the two-way lane needs to be extended further east for people who want to make a left onto Washington Road out of CVS. Has this been looked into? The commercial zone is Washington, so why is the front of the CVS on Sayreville Boulevard? Currently, we have this wonderful Town Lake sign and beautiful landscaping welcoming you into a residential neighborhood, which I think is the appropriate look, and should be maintained by having trees blocking the CVS at Sayreville Boulevard. Will the Washington and Sayreville Boulevard light be adjusted to meet the new traffic pattern? The proposed plans will change our community. I understand that this is a commercial zone property, but taking into account these concerns, maybe this is not the best location. Has there been research done on other locations around town that might be better suited? Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Evening, sir. Need to swear you in. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And please give us your name and spell your last name.
Edward Streck, S-T-R-E-K, lifelong resident of Sayreville, and probably the most senior resident in these chambers today.
And your address, sir?
58 Nickel Avenue, Sayreville.
Thank you. Please continue.
I'm not an engineer. I'm not a traffic expert, lawyer, or planner. I'm a street person from Sayreville. Lived in Sayreville all of my 59 years. I grew up just 2 blocks from these chambers. 2 blocks. I can remember walking out of the front door of my house and being able to purchase anything you needed. Anything you needed. And I can name every store that was on Main Street from MacArthur Avenue to Washington Road. So what's going to happen? So what happened? A young family moves into Sayreville, opens up a pharmacy, builds a business, loved by all the people of Sayreville, always willing to help, always willing to help. They'll deliver prescriptions to your home. What happened to Sayreville? Big business. Big business moved into Sayreville, wiped out every little store on Main Street in Sayreville. Individual opens a pharmacy with his family and builds a beautiful business. So what's going to happen? What happened in Sayreville? Big business built the 8th wonder of the world, that apartment house on Main Street in Sayreville. That's what they did. Where's all the little stores? They're gone. Never come back. What's going to happen? CVS is going to move into town. What's going to happen to the little store, the little pharmacy? He's going to be forced to close. He's going to be forced to close. And not to get off the subject, you mentioned that there was no generator in the CVS store. What are they going to do with the prescription drugs that need refrigeration? What are they going to do with it?
No generators proposed at this site, Mr. Streck. I'm sure
Well,
they have,
they're-
we have other backup plans, but yes, we can.
There's no generator? Okay. So, I know the brick house. I know the family. And I'll tell you what kind of family they are. Memorial Day, our color guard, average age 70 years old, was looking for a place to march to shorten the parade route. Who came to our rescue? The brick house. The brick house. That's what kind of family they are. I hate to see them go. It's a landmark in town. It's frequented by a lot of residents of Sayreville, a lot. And as far as trouble there, Chairman, you brought up a good point. There aren't a lot of problems with police or drunks or whatever there are. But I would just suggest that the board really consider this very carefully, what they're going to be bringing into Sayreville. Developers paint a pretty picture. I've been to meetings here. Landscaping, no traffic, no traffic. Parking, these are all common things they bring up, and for the developer. But I would say, and I would recommend, that you really take a close look at this project and let your conscience be your guide. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Doing so, need to swear you in. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please give us your name, spell your last name,
First name Norman, last name Shah, S-H-A-H,
and your address, Mr. Shaw.
10 Skirka Court,
And could you spell your first name for us?
N-O-R-E-N,
N-O-R-E-N.
What was the address again?
Skirka, S-K-U-R-K-A.
Thank you, sir. Please continue.
Okay, some of the concerns I have with CVS coming in here is, CVS this year closed in March and April 46 stores. What are the plans if they were to underperform? Including this closed a 64,000 square foot, the largest CVS store in the world in Springfield, Missouri. So what happens? That's another reason why. And if, like they said, that pharmacy is the main business they have, that's not true. In 2018, prescription drug sales for CVS was only 24%. And the rest of the revenue, 69.2%, was from other products. I also checked CVS's consolidated fourth quarter and full year earnings for 2018, revenue in millions. Their sales were $54,424 million, out of which enterprise prescriptions were only $685.2 million. So there's a big, they're selling other stuff. It's not just prescription that we need them for. The way it they came across. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Evening, ma'am, need to swear you in. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And give us your name, spell your last name.
Pamela Dougherty, D-O-U-G-H-E-R-T-Y,
And your address?
40 Sayreville Boulevard South.
Thank you. Please continue.
I have been a resident of Town Lake for over 15 years. I am also a board member for our homeowners association. I am here tonight to voice my opposition to the proposed plans for a CVS building. My disapproval is based on the following reasons. What benefit is served by building a CVS store at the corner of Washington Road and Sayreville Boulevard South? Our town has Rite Aid, Quick Check, Quick Mart, Walgreens, ShopRite, to name a few, all within close proximity to serve our pharmaceutical and shopping needs. For me personally and hundreds of fellow neighbors, we patronize our local pharmacist, Paresh Patel, at the Sayreville Pharmacy on Main Street. I believe in patronizing our local small businesses as much as we can. As it is, in my opinion, our town lacks a true Main Street, giving local small businesses the opportunity to flourish and a place for residents to enjoy a downtown experience. Aren't there large vacancies at the ShopRite Center on Ernston Road where the children's wear place used to be? And at one time, I also think at the Quick Check strip mall on Main Street. I feel that a large strip mall is more suitable to house a store the size of CVS. More importantly, I feel that the CVS building will create many hardships. A CVS building at the corner entrance to our development is not physically appealing in any way. Our HOA spent over $25,000 to construct monumental signage at the entrance of Washington Road for the beautification of our development and the surrounding residential homes. The CVS, in my opinion, will be an eyesore to our residential neighborhood, and I'm afraid that it will devalue all of our homes. I did have on here the Downs Drive issue. That obviously looks like it's been resolved, but I don't know honestly how I feel about having traffic entering on Sayreville Boulevard either. Our development will now have more commercial traffic coming through our development on Sayreville Boulevard South. We have a traffic circle in close proximity to Yetman Court and Fritz Drive. We already have issues with trucks damaging our sprinkler pipes and landscaping as they attempt to drive around the narrow circle. Again, our HOA spent thousands of dollars on boulders that were placed as barriers within the traffic circle to minimize the damage caused by commercial trucks. The increase in traffic in our area will also increase the amount of litter in our neighborhood. Again, our HOA spends significant funds to maintain our beautifully manicured common grounds, and we do not want the burden of more litter and garbage in our development. Instead of a CVS building, why couldn't there be a cluster of small businesses like a nail salon, a gym, a coffee bagel shop, small office space? An example would be something similar to the strip mall on Washington Road that houses the Deli Plus, a small daycare center, and the home appliance store. Or why not just more residential homes instead of commercial property? Town Lake residents are probably one of the highest paying contributors to property taxes in Sayreville. We comprise over 340 residential homes, a strong presence in this town with voting power. Our voices should be heard loud and clear. I have spoken to many of my neighbors, and the feeling is mutual. We don't have lawyers, engineers, or experts to guide us through this process. We are concerned homeowners who are extremely upset and concerned about the impact of this project. This is our town, and I hope you strongly consider our disapproval of this building and the hardships that it presents. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Need to swear you in. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
And give us your name, spell your last name.
First name Silfredo, last name Rivera, R-I-V-E-R-A.
And your address, sir.
17 Frisk Drive,
Thank you.
in the community known as Town Lake.
Great, thank you. Please continue.
I'm here today to echo what Pam said. I'm also on the executive board for the Homeowner Association. Been a resident of Town Lake since 2004. I'm also a retired law enforcement officer, sergeant with the Port Authority for over 25 years, total on law enforcement over 30 years. My wife is also a retired person educator also. The way I look at the situation, why I object for the CVI site to be here in our community is also for the fact I look at it as a financial hardship in our community. Right now, we pay a lot of money to maintain our properties, landscaping. Our insurance rates went up because of the situation with the brick house. There's a lawsuit, so the insurance company raised our rates because someone's suing. We had another person who was visiting our community, don't even live there, fell, sued us, so the insurance company raised our rates again. By having a CVS, it's gonna increase more traffic in our community, safety for our kids. As a law enforcement officer, I see people racing by, and I watch these cars go by, not even residents here. They're using our community as a shortcut as it is right now. So now with the increase of flow traffic, the gentleman from CVS says the average CVS store has 2,000 transactions. You know how many cars that's gonna be exiting on Sabre Boulevard? I know drivers, they're not gonna go by safety route, they're not gonna stop and look. My wife had an accident there, a car was totaled there on that same corner because the person didn't see the stop sign. They made a mistake. People are distracted. So imagine having all this traffic out here coming on the roadway, they're distracted, and our children are there, the bus stop is right there, the kids are there every morning. And I see this every morning, I see all the parents dropping off the kids. I says, wow, there is a lot of kids in Town Lake. So my objection is safety and the cost for our community. Again, echoing what Pam said, you know, we have over 258 homes just in Town Lake 1, another 90 in Town Lake 2. We are a big tax basis for this town here. So hear what we have to say and make Town Lake a beautiful community, what it is. We spent a lot of money, please, side with this. Thank you for your time.
Evening, sir. Swear you in? You swear
do.
affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And give us your name, spell your last name.
Manoj Porwal. Last name is P as in Peter, O-R-W-A-L.
And your address?
6 Fritz Drive. I'm a resident of Town Lake.
Thank you. Please continue.
Am I allowed to ask questions on the information that witnesses have provided?
If you have
Those are some
questions,
clarifications.
you can certainly state those, and we'll ask the applicant to address them.
Thank you. Next few questions are related, basically they are based on information provided by the CBS representative. I would like to know if they can provide the time when they will see the heaviest consumer in and out.
Just give all the questions, and they'll address them if they want to.
There may be associated question based on their response, so is that okay?
Okay, well, why don't you give the list of questions you have,
Sure.
and we'll ask them to
That's my
address them.
first question. I feel it's morning and evening. That's when the resident of the Town Lake moves. So we are basically aiding to the heaviest traffic that's during morning and evening. When I have to pick up my pharmacy or medicine, normally I'm going either when I'm going to office or coming back from office. So essentially the same traffic pattern will happen here, which will aid to the rush hour traffic. Second point is there was a mention of external cameras being installed to monitor activities. I would like to know if that will capture anything outside the campus of CVS, and are there any privacy, provisions that we should be aware of? Then, is there a biohazard possibility? I understand it's a pharmacy. I'm not sure if they do blood testing. If they do blood testing, is there someone coming to collect that? And, what are the disposal criteria? Will that aid to traffic? I would like to know that. Also, the population of 29,000 that was considered, a part of that was in a South River. I would like to know that how much percentage of that population in South River is within 2 miles of 2 CVS in the East Brunswick, because they have choices of 3 now. These were the questions for CVS. I have a few questions for the brick house. Should I go with them?
Might as well.
Sure. My understanding is that the truck that will enter from Washington Road will not have an exit on the Washington Road, but they will essentially go onto the Sayreville Boulevard South, go across the median, and then exit to Washington Road. If that is correct, I would like to know from Brick House how many of their trucks actually go onto the Sayreville Boulevard South while making the deliveries, whether that's an alcohol delivery or any other delivery. My understanding is none of their truck ever come to the Sayreville Boulevard South. Their truck enter onto the Washington Road and exit onto the Washington Road, which is not the case with the CVS. Right? Because my friend made that as a very important point. I would like to say that it doesn't matter to us because none of their delivery truck ever enters our community. All right. There was also mention of parking space brawl. I would like to know how many of their parking spaces actually open towards our community. What I'm trying to say is it may happen in their parking space, but we are isolated because there is no opening towards our community. There is a wall between the parking space and the community. That may not happen with the CVS because they will have an entrance from the Sayreville Boulevard, South. So again, the problem that have been highlighted by planner and by other people here, they are very local to that business. They does not impact our community because they don't have opening towards that. Okay. Those were some of the questions. I obviously have a lot of concerns around, I'm father to two kids, a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, both of them attending the Sayreville school. The 14-year-old essentially come on his own. He walks across the Sayreville Boulevard South, and given the current situation, there are not many cars that is stopped for pedestrian. Even though they are residents of Town Lake, they are not stopping at the zebra crossing. I'm not sure what will happen with the people or the non-resident coming into our community. We are again just leaving with the hope that our friend mentioned, because there are many more chances of accident with the people not aware of the community, not having any skin in the game there. It's not their kids who are on those streets. So keeping that in mind, keeping increased traffic, the safety of elderlies and kids, my humble request, as my friends have done, many of my neighbors have done, that the board really take a very, very hard look at the rosy picture that has been presented. We all have been there several times where such a rosy picture comes and then results are very different. I will really, really request to give it a very hard look. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Mr. Sachs, do you want the opportunity at this point to respond to those questions that were asked?
Yeah, I think I wrote down the questions. I can respond to it. I think the first question was, what are the peak hours for the proposed CVS? And I think at the first hearing, there was testimony that the peak hours are roughly 4 or 4:30 to about 6:30 on the weekdays, and on Saturdays, 11 to 1. So those are the peak hours where you would see the most activity at CVS. I think the second question was, will the exterior cameras pick up anything outside of the site? I doubt it. I mean, could there be some overlap onto Sayreville Boulevard South in Washington? There may be, but it's really cameras that'll be geared towards the site itself. I think the third question was whether any biohazards are stored on the premises. Not to my knowledge. I don't think I think we heard testimony. There is not a minute clinic to be proposed there, so there's no blood taken. Shots are provided, but that does not result in any biohazard. And if there is a needle or an injection that has to be disposed of, that's done in accordance with state law and then retrieved by an approved carrier. Fourth question was the proximity of other CVSs, the two CVSs in East Brunswick, to the South River community. There's one located on Route 18 in Prospect Street. That might be within 2 miles of downtown South River. It's probably awfully close. The other site on Ruse Lane in East Brunswick is probably 4 miles away from South River, so that's deep into the heart of East Brunswick. I think the fifth question was the traffic, truck traffic exiting the site. Again, testimony at the first hearing, which is unchanged based on the revised plan, that all truck traffic is going to circulate around the site and will exit onto Washington. There'll be no truck traffic going out to Sayreville Boulevard. We will agree to, obviously, we would agree to a condition that will post signage there. And since we control our truck deliveries, we will certainly advise drivers that they're not to go out Sayreville Boulevard. So they will all know to circulate out to Washington. And I'll speak for the Brick House. I'm trying to remember what the question was with the Brick House, but I believe it dealt with, I think it dealt with the number of parking spaces that they have and where they're located and how trucks circulate out of their site. Well, we know that there is no circulation out to Downs Drive from the Brick House because that's the rear of their property and there's no access there now. And there won't be any access in the future either because we've closed down the Downs Drive entrance. So any trucks that come into the Brick House now would actually be entering through Washington and leaving through Washington, which is what's proposed for this site as well. So I think I've answered all the questions. Hopefully.
Unless the folks in the Brick House want to respond to anything, I think Mr. Sachs probably covered it. Okay, just wanted to give you the opportunity. Thank you. Ma'am. You, ma'am, you swear in, you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please give us your name, spell your last name.
Lakshmi Kotikalapudi,
Spell your last name, please.
Kotikalapudi,
And your address?
46 Fritz Drive.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay.
One second. What's your first name again, ma'am?
Lakshmi, Lakshmi.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, so yeah, I do not like the idea of having the CVS there. First of all, the thought is 10 years ago, my doctor told me go to ShopRite, not to CVS. CVS is very expensive. So I don't see the logic or a reason. So many pharmacies are all the way around us, and including not including ShopRite. There are several pharmacies right on Washington Road, Raritan Road, and towards East Brunswick. On the top of it, right now, the lawyer was saying that the trucks would not exit on Sayreville Boulevard. Then why would the regular traffic or the customers exit on Sayreville Boulevard? So my problem is, why should we handle that unnecessary traffic in our community? So that is a major problem for me. So 10 years ago, I almost paid more than $500,000 for that house there to live peacefully and happily there. And now this CVS unnecessary traffic is being pushed onto us, which is totally not needed there. They can have a smaller, resell that property. The Brick House can be resold to a smaller business, not like CVS. CVS is too big for that lot. It is right now nice and green there. There are trees and the school bus stops. It is really nice out there, and that all will be erased or demolished to make way for a large CVS building. And I don't really see the need, but if trucks can exit out of Washington Street, Washington Road, so similarly they can reroute the traffic also, not to spill into Town Lake, but go exit on Washington Road itself. If they can do that, you can, maybe you can have, or even then I will not be happy to have the CVS there, but if that is the case, I might reluctantly agree. but not in my development. I don't need that unnecessary traffic in Town Lake. We pay huge tax, property taxes. Almost average property tax in Town Lake is 12,000 a year. On top of it, we don't want. I request you to spare us of this unnecessary pain of having a CVS there. And also, like many other people mentioned, like in the summers, there are many children playing on those streets, on the sidewalks. They all will be put in the way of danger, having this additional traffic spill into Sayreville Boulevard just to make a like left turn or right turn onto Washington Road. So those are my concerns. I hope you will heed to our concerns and rethink your decision to provide this permit to build a CVS there. Thank you very much.
Evening, ma'am. Do you swear in? You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please give us your name, spell your last name.
Sure. My name's Elizabeth. The last name's Newber, N-U-B-E-R. And my husband and I, we live at 49 Hart Street.
Thank you. Please continue.
I just have one quick statement and one quick question for you, real quick. I know you had touched on previously just the claims. As a commercial insurance agent, I understand that there are certain claims going on. I just feel as though it was a little unfair, and I just didn't want them to diminish the character of Brick House. We should probably really have a claims adjuster and just pull loss runs before we kind of do things like that. And the question I have is, if CVS were to go in and everything were to be approved tonight, what's the time frame that the property would sit vacant, and what's the time frame that CVS would be up and running, if you don't mind?
Well, first of all, CVS obviously is a contract purchaser with the Brick House. So first we would have to close on that property.
Okay.
Or the property owner who owns the adjacent property would have to close on that property.
What would that time frame be, give or take?
You know, I'm not sure. I haven't reviewed the contract, but I'm sure there's a provision in there.
Okay.
And generally, I would tell you from beginning to end, the construction, getting built, it's going to take at least 18 months.
18 months?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's all that I have, thank you.
Oh, and yes, one other thing.
Yes?
I forgot to mention that. We're only here for a use variance this evening. We would still, if the board were to act favorably on this application, we would still have to seek site plan approval to build it. So you're probably looking at an even longer time period.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Sir, come on up.
You swear in, sir? You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Give us your name, spell your last name.
Edward, A-D-D-O.
And
Adam.
And your address?
21 Skurka.
Thank you. Please.
Skurka. S-K-U-R-K. All right. I want a clarification. You said there's no biohazard. You do immunization over there at the CVS?
I mentioned that there are flu shots given, and I mentioned that those needles would be disposed of in a biohazard container and then carried off on site by a regulated carrier.
You said there was no biohazard.
No, I didn't say that. I said.
You said that. They can go through the
Sir,
records.
if you want me to clarify, I said we're not drawing blood, but we are giving, yes, we are giving shots.
Yeah, but the needle is a biohazard.
Yes, there is a biohazard that is.
So that was a misleading statement.
Why don't you make a comment, and if I need to respond, I will. Continue.
So I will urge the board to, not rush into any decision, because I have 3 kids, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And I'm at the end of the cul-de-sac, and there's a fire entrance over there, and I always have cars coming in and out. I always have to replace those barriers that they put over there, and they keep breaking it. So these statements that is coming true, we leave it. And it's a lot of misleading statements going on over here. So before any decision is taken, lives are at stake. Don't wait until something goes down, and it will be too late at that point. We leave it. Please make sure you do the right thing. Everybody is a paid, employee over here. And they are all doing their duties. At the end of the day, they'll go to their various homes. It's safe. They have ordinance protecting their, communities. We don't have it. We don't have it. We depend on you guys. So please do the right thing. We have voting power. Thank you.
Giving sir, need to swear you in. You swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please give us your name, spell your last name.
Mayur, M-A-Y-U-R, last name Patel, P-A-T-E-L. Address 3 Whitehall Court.
It was Whitehall?
Whitehall.
Thank you.
So, gentlemen of the Housing Board Committee, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for extending this time as well as way past 10:30 at night, so definitely want to thank you. My question is for Kaplan. 11 years ago when we were pregnant with our first daughter, 12 years ago, wow. We bought this property. We were looking around all over New Jersey. We found the town of Sayreville, small community, that gives you that feeling of being in a community that cares for everybody. And we found this property, this property in Kaplan. At the time, 2006, we paid way over market value for the house, over $600,000 for the home, but we made a living over here. The selling point for Kaplan was that come live in this community. This is the place you want to bring up your children. Since then, we have seen nothing but our property value drop due to the market recession, understandably so, but for various other reasons. However, if you put up a big commercial property like this, what happens to our property? And what happens to that dream that you sold us, that showed us that this is a community that we can bring our children up? To what my other neighbors have mentioned, that it's a community. We are a 300+ community. I don't know if you have ever a chance to come visit during our Halloween days, but we have children from starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, going around to almost every single house in the community, and they come back with tons of candy in their hands. I mean, my children especially as well. They love going to each and every one of those houses and collecting those candies on Halloweens. Christmas time, people drive around because we do beautiful decoration. We have a large Hindu community as well. We do Diwali celebration in the community as well. All this now will, having the extra traffic coming through us, will put a stop to all this festivity, all this activity that happens in our neighborhood. So as a board, I would strongly urge you to stop this, because again, this is a community that we love and cherish, and we want to raise our children, and hoping that the generations of Sayreville that have grew up in those houses, my children will grow up in this community as well. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And please give us your name, spell your last name.
Janelle, last name Lyles, L-Y-L-E-S.
Thank you. And your address, please.
8 Sayreville Boulevard South.
Thank you. Please continue.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure we all watch the news, and every day it becomes more important that we need to move towards a sustainable future. I'm not so sure that CVS is helping us in that fight. In fact, this morning, CNN Climate reported that the state of California is fining CVS $3.6 million for failure to follow recycling laws. The very, very long receipts CVS gives to customers after purchasing just a handful of items is a running joke all over social media. I have a few memes printed out in case anyone needs to see. The meme I read this morning, quote, "Insane fact, the sun is approximately 8 CVS receipts from the earth," end quote. Now, keep in mind, CVS stated earlier that they see about 2 to 3K transactions in a day. CVS and team, for tonight's location in question, not only do you want to knock down our beautiful trees to create yourself a parking lot, but you're also going to have a weekly rotation of large delivery trucks that will ultimately be polluting our air. And now we're even talking about biohazards. You said there will be 3 CVS locations within 3 miles of each other in the same town earlier. In addition to this location in question tonight, we already have a CVS less than 3 miles away. So, one, I want everyone to consider their carbon footprint tonight, and CVS, please stop being so greedy. Instead, take this time to focus on better sustainability practices before you dramatically increase your carbon footprint again. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Just have a suggestion based on the timeline that you had provided. If it's going
Ma'am,
to-
sorry.
Sorry.
Usually we don't let people speak twice, but just give your
Oh,
name and if you can be
sorry.
very brief.
Sure, it'll be very brief. My name is Sidra Rahan.
You're still under oath, ma'am.
I'm sorry? Sidra Rahan, S-I-D-R-A, last name is R-E-H-A-N. So based on the timeline provided, over 18 months in construction alone, plus all the legalities before that, why not consider Riverton, a place that's going to be new and city-like anyway, for new construction as opposed to building in a residential area? That's just a suggestion. Thank you.
You swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please give us your name, spell your last name. Sir, please give us your name and spell your last name.
Yeah, I'm just saying basically
Oh.
how to basically to speak on this.
There we go.
My name is Ashok Kanodia, last name K-A-N-O-D-I-A. I live in Sayreville for the last 14 years at 1 White Rubble Court. My house is the second house on the Downs Drive, so I'll be right north of this proposed CVS if it is built. So I'll be probably the most affected person, in this neighborhood. So sir, I have actually a couple of concerns. I want to say I bought this house almost 14 years ago, and since then the house prices hasn't gone up. Whatever the reason may be, and so house is the single biggest investment that people make in their lifetime. And with the prices going down, especially if the CVS is built, you can imagine what will happen to the house prices. And the taxes are going up and up. When I bought the house, my taxes were $10,000. Now I'm paying more than $14,000. And the house prices are going down. And we can imagine the kind of traffic we're gonna get. Somebody mentioned we are expecting around 2,000 to 3,000 transactions a day. Say, let's assume 2,500 transactions a day. You're talking about almost 170 cars an hour. If they are open for 14 hours, from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 14 hours, 2,500 cars, almost 170 cars an hour. And that's a lot of traffic. And if you're talking about only the peak hours, which is 4:30 to 6:30, I don't know how many cars we're gonna have, and that's the time when our kids actually play in that area. And as you mentioned earlier, one of my neighbor, that during all these times, during festivities, during Halloween, during Diwali and Christmas, all kids are out there, and you don't know the number of crimes that are happening. You must have heard recently that a 5-year-old girl was abducted almost a month ago and yet to be found. So we don't know what's going to happen with all this traffic coming in our neighborhood. And of course, not to mention the amount of money we are paying to keep the neighborhood, to beautify the neighborhood as part of our association fees every month. And with all this traffic and all the people coming in our neighborhood, there goes the safety, so the beauty. So this is just my humble request to the town, to the board, that please think twice, before we make the decision, and just, think about the concerns. We are already burdened with all the taxes, and especially with the taxes that were proposed or that were implemented, where we can't even get the tax were restricted, where we cannot claim more than $10,000. I'm sure you're all aware of. And we can't even itemize all these taxes and all. So with the burden of all this and the prices is going down, that'll be disastrous for us. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Is there anyone else from the public wish to speak? I make a motion to close the public portion. Public portion is closed. Mr. Sachs, do you have anything else, any closing remarks to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Well, you've heard the testimony. We presented several witnesses. We presented our engineer, our traffic engineer, our CVS representative, property owner from the brick house, and obviously our planner. And I think the gist of what this board should take from this application is that, and despite protestations from the public, this is not really an intensive use. We know what type of use and what type of activity is generated at a CVS or a Walgreens or a Rite Aid. You've heard testimony from our traffic expert that the 48 parking spaces are more than adequate to service this site. The peak hours of operation are not going to conflict with school bus activity that was testified to at the first hearing. So that there really is not going to be a tremendous impact to the surrounding neighborhood. And I think Ms. Cofone, in her very good and concise testimony, brought up that point. I think more importantly is to equate this particular use as a convenience store is doing an injustice to what we all know is what a convenience store is and what a pharmacy is. There's testimony that this pharmacy generates 85% of its activity from the sales of pharmacy and over-the-counter goods. That's important because most of the goods that are sold at a CVS are not prescriptions. They're over-the-counter goods. They're your aspirin, they're your Band-Aids, there's supplies for personal hygiene, there's shampoo, there's soap. Those are the over-the-counter goods. That's not what a convenience store does. Yes, does Wawa sell some of the same material and same products? Certainly they do. But I think we all know what a Wawa is and what a 7-Eleven is. And we also know what a CVS is and what a Rite Aid. And they're not the same business model. They're not the same business. I think the gist here is that this is a use that is appropriate for this site. It is suitable for this site. It is not going to generate a lot of truck traffic. You have testimony from the engineer and from our traffic engineer that we get one tractor trailer delivery a week, and we get the occasional box truck or a Coca-Cola type truck to drop off other supplies. Compare that to what happens at the brick house now, which is two tractor trailer deliveries a week and 7 other types of pickups by smaller trucks. The truck activity will be less on this site than you currently have at the brick house. The hours of operation of the brick house go late into the evening. They go till 2 a.m. The brick house owners testified that certainly there's intoxicated individuals on that site. I don't think we're going to have the same type of activity at a CVS, which closes at 10 o'clock. And for patrons who are looking to either pick up prescriptions or buy other over-the-counter goods or the occasional gallon of milk or toilet paper. We're talking about 2 different activities. Ms. Cofone testified that the type of use that currently goes on at the brick house, although it's a well-run business, is not the type of use that you're encouraging in this zone. So this particular use is much more compatible to what fits in with the development pattern on Washington. It will service the needs of the Town Lake community. And listen, I understand the public. Nobody wants to see anything built in their backyard, anywhere in New Jersey. That's just the reality. All right, but again, this board has to be guided by land use statutes, by land use principles, and by the testimony that's been elicited. And we're seeking, really, it's a bifurcated hearing. We're only seeking a use variance this evening. If the board does act favorably, we'll come back for site plan approval. But I urge the board to review the testimony that you've heard July 24th and this evening. I urge the board to give careful consideration to the other types of really more impactful and more intensive uses that could occur on this site, and the elimination of a use that is not encouraged on this site, that being the brick house. So I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your indulgence in expediting this and giving us the opportunity to present. and we're asking for a favorable vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. The board has heard the testimony. The board has also heard the remarks from the public. What is the board's pleasure regarding this application?
Mr. Chairman, just before we do that, are there any loose ends that have to be taken care of, like anything that Jay or then the engineers have to work out, just so we know, or is everything taken care of?
Actually, I think we've gone through Jay's report, I think, last hearing, and probably to some detail this evening as well. So I think it is, obviously, we're not dealing with any technical engineering issues, but certainly there are waivers that we're seeking, which I think are all related, basically, because we're dealing with 3 front yards and the fact that the parking lot will not have the islands, but certainly an accommodation has been made. But I think, Jay, I think we've covered all of your comments, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Chairman, you're correct. You've gone through the report. You've indicated a lot of our items were site plan related, so they'll have to be dealt with in the future. And you did speak your reasons for looking for the board to grant favorable the waiver request.
And also, because I think Mr. Barry had some comments as well, which I think were probably similar to Mr. Cornell's comments, but we tried to cover them as well.
They were either addressed concurrently with Jay's or in Christine's testimony, or are things that would be deferred to site plan.
Thank you.
The board understands that you're asking, seeking a D1 use variance, and that's all that you're asking for.
I think there was a parking variance as well, a bulk variance for parking and several design waivers.
I'm going to make the motion to deny this application.
Folks, please refrain. You guys have been very good tonight. I know it's been a long night. The board needs to discuss their reasons why they're going to deny the application. So we have a few more minutes, and I appreciate everyone just keeping quiet. Again, we do realize it's late in the evening, and you've been very patient. So please continue with your patience. Mr. Chairman.
The board has heard my motion. I need a second. I have a motion to deny, and I have a second. Roll call.
So just to clarify, a vote yes is a vote in favor of denial.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan? Mr. Emma?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Civilli?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
At this time, I want to read the reasons why I made the motion for denial. The 2013 Borough of Sayreville Master Plan and the related borough ordinances do not permit this use within the OS Office Services Overlay District. The zoning in this district is split between an R7 PDR, the zone is between the R7 PRD and the R7 residential zone. This proposed use is not permitted. This applicant has a more intense use than the master plan and the related ordinances allow for. The applicant has to meet the burden of proof as required by law that there are special reasons to grant this application without substantial detriment to the public good or substantial impairment to the zoning ordinances and the master plan. The applicant's testimony has failed to prove these standards for the area in question. It is noted that there are 11 pharmacies within 4 miles of this proposed application, including another CVS. The applicant is also requesting at least 7 waivers and a variance, including parking, signage, landscaping, to the overall zone requirements. This application use is too intense for the zoned area. It is further noted that the applicant owns the property in question and has the option to comply and can comply with the zoning ordinance to build residential or a structure of permitted use within the zone, or to leave it as it is, a wooded property as presently defined. Lastly, I cannot think of any conditions that we could put on this application to lessen the negative impacts. Therefore, the positive impacts do not outweigh the negative, the total basis for voting no and denying this application. Thank you.
Clear out the resolution.
Yep, I got it.
Give me that,
Give you what?
so I can put it in the minutes.
This what I read?
Yeah.
Okay, Bill?
I know, that's what I read every time we do this.
You think it went all right?
Yeah, that was good.
At least we did it. Did what we could do. Yeah, I mean,
Wait till the public gets out.
One resolution. That's what I'm saying. Just read loudly. You and I will do it.
You gonna do it?
Board members, we have one last piece of business this evening. We have adoption of a memorializing resolution from last month. It was a Dorothy Jewell application on 33 Oakwood Drive. The homeowner was looking to put an addition on their single-family home. There was a violation of combined yard setbacks. The resolution's been provided to the board members. Unless there's any question, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the written resolution. We have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Emma?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Savili? Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Also, has the board had the opportunity to review the minutes of October the 23rd?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
So-
I move the minutes be approved. Second.
Minutes of October 23rd are approved. It is noted that our next meeting will be January the 22nd at 7 PM. That's our reorganization meeting,
And the regular meeting will start at, right,
and the regular meeting will start at 7:30.
or right after, as soon as we finish reorg.
Any further business to come before the board?
Just a quick, at the conference in Atlantic City, I heard that the board's attorney and planner and maybe some other board professionals should be sworn in for each application and/or at the beginning of the year.
We swear everybody in the beginning of the year, and we keep them under, when we do reorg, we actually swear them in, and they're under oath for the remainder of the year. I know your point that you made and seen at those. I don't think you need to swear them in each application. I think that just is a lot of drag on time.
I have it covered. Thanks.
Right, and anything else, Mr. Chairman?
Carl, was he talking about
Swearing you folks in?
Yeah, so the board planner and our board engineer would be sworn in each application.
Because they might actually testify, like Jay might testify to the conditions on the ground, and
Yeah,
I might
something
testify.
he saw that varies from what the applicant. But yeah, so we swear them in at reorg, and they're just under oath the entire year, which I think covers it. But it's a good points to bring up when you hear those things.
How about you?
No, attorney.
No. And the last thing I want to say is I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday. And I really want to thank this board for working together with me and getting all these things done. I appreciate your help in everything that we do work together, and well done. And I thank each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Great reader. Thank you.
And if there's anything else, we make a motion for adjournment.
Just want to say you did an excellent job with the reasons on that last application.
We shouldn't talk about applications.
Did your homework, so, and we're prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn? Meeting's adjourned.
Shut this off.
So Tony, go see that intersection someday at 3 o'clock when they get out. You'll be. See Isaac. Oh yeah, no, it's pretty wild. All right, kids.